We'll be back with the weather in just a little bit. Let's take a look at the headlines today. Hudson Valley braves record cold temperatures. Frankly, I have to be frank here. I think, Chris, that it is being overrated. I think people are panicking as usual. And what you ought to do is feel free, take your coat off, sit there. We'll talk to you in a little bit. The board postpones a vote on Metro North parking fees and those increases amid criticism from Assemblywoman Amy Paulin. Good for her. We criticized it on Monday. You're 2 days late, Amy. A hero cop who saved a child from rabid coyotes receives a state life-saving award, and a famous Mount Vernon pizzeria returns after a fire. The Mets win, and so that we deal with the 500-pound gorilla in the room, the impeachment hearings begin publicly today, and the New York Post has severely embarrassed themselves. They're no longer a newspaper. They're an arm of, well, state news. All righty, you can put on headphones. We allow that here at the radio station. Chris Conway, longtime radio man himself, is in with us this morning, checking things out. We'll be talking with him in a little while, but first, let's take a look at the top story, and it does involve the weather. You better bundle up when you head out the door today, as record temperatures will make for dangerous conditions. Dangerous conditions if you don't take common sense. It's another cold day in the neighborhood. It's 20. It's not like it's minus 20. It's not like it's 40 degrees below zero and there are 70-mile-an-hour winds. Good grief! You know, we can't even say we're turning to snowflakes because snowflakes would be colder than what it is. Chill. Well, no. Maybe that's bad advice for you to chill. But anyway, News 12 meteorologists who gave us our weather today say that while it will be sunny, temperatures will struggle to make it into the freezing mark. However, a stiff 10 to 25 mile per hour breeze, which we have not felt yet, will make it feel like a single digit. Experts, though, and this is true if you're feeble or you have problems or medical problems, experts are urging anyone who has to go outside to bundle up with layers of clothing and say you should limit any amount of time being outdoors. And in the upper levels here in Westchester, you may find that there's some black ice, but so far we haven't seen any. We really were spared yesterday. And now we will take a full look at the weather before we get to our headlines. The weather this morning is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. It is 21. Oh, God, help. We all got to run away. It's 21 degrees, getting up to 34. That'll be the tops today. Lots of sunshine and breezy. Tonight, partly cloudy. Good sleeping weather. I love when it's cold outside, just so long as I'm not shivering. 24 degrees. The wind will be out of the northwest, 5 to 10 miles an hour. And then Thursday, mostly cloudy. The temperature will warm up a balmy 43 degrees. The wind will be out of the south, 5 to 10 miles an hour. And on Friday, mostly sunny skies, getting up to 50 degrees. This morning's news and first hour programs are brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic Cigars, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and of course our friends at the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Let's get to the rest of the news. Metro North committee members shelved discussion yesterday of a plan to increase parking fees at commuter rail stations. This in Low HUD this morning. Assemblywoman Amy Paulin said she and others met with Metro North staff less than a week ago, and the proposal never came up. And she went on to say, though, that we, quote, we are gravely concerned by the lack of notice and transparency surrounding the proposal. You remember when we started out the week 2 days ago, Chris, that it was on the table. Not just do they want to raise the amount of money you pay to get on the train, now they want to increase the amount of money they want you to pay when you park. And just think, when you pay the extra money and you go into the parking lot and you pay the extra money on the train, you're making some guy or gal a $300,000 overtime player because these people can't manage their underwear. We've got to get tougher and firmer with these public organizations that rip us off. They have your hand in you. You can't go anywhere. You can't cross a bridge. You can't go on a road. You can't park your car. You can't park your car when you go to dinner. And heaven forbid you go over that little white line and the red light camera gets you too. They have more ways to take your money than you can even imagine. Rise up. Okay. Little news that doesn't get me so aggravated, and this is a sweet story. An Irvington police officer, one Arcangelo Liberatore, never expected to face a rabid coyote or save a 5-year-old, but he did do both. This story out of LOHUD this morning and the Journal News. Liberatore was awarded the State Division of Criminal Justice Services 2018 Lifetime Award yesterday for his act of heroism. It goes back to April 29th, 2018. He was with his family at a park in Thornwood when he heard distress screams from a 5-year-old. The child, Natalia, was being attacked by a coyote. He intervened. He kept the animal at bay. Get this, using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I not only know how to do it, I barely knew how to pronounce it. Good for him. And another pizza. There are never enough pizzerias, and this always starts another debate. We're going to talk to Chris Conway. Some of you will remember him from his years on WVOX. We'll talk with him in a little while, but first, Mount Vernon Pizzeria, Chris, returns after fire and the owner's death. So obviously he didn't reopen it. Mount Vernon Pizzeria that fell on hard times last summer is back and up and serving clients. This according to a story in News 12. A fire damaged Johnny's Pizzeria back in June. Nearly a year before that, the owner of the shop, Maria Piscopo, died in a car accident. The Piscopo family says they are recovering from the loss of the pizza's matriarch by sticking together and putting their love back. Now, it's important, folks, these iconic retail outlets, particularly pizzerias and things like that, they kind of define a neighborhood. Well, it's been there in Mount Vernon for 75 years. Good luck. Speaking of tolls, I probably should have moved this story up in the lineup. You got another toll coming your way. Squeal! Connecticut proposes a 50-cent toll on northbound I-684. You can't even sneak to 684 to go northeast in Greenwich for just 1.4 miles. 1.4 miles, another 50 cents. Now, it's not that that's a lot of money. It's that if you crossed a bridge or you took Route 95 where you parked to get a sandwich, you paid for that too. This in LOHUD this morning, in what would be one of the nation's shortest toll roads, Governor Ned Lamont wants to erect a cashless toll gantry on northbound Interstate 684 as part of the state's $300 million toll plan that Lamont, a Greenwich Democrat, unveiled last week to help finance his $21 billion transportation infrastructure plan. I thought when they fixed the infrastructure, it would make things more efficient. You can't even go a mile without paying a toll. All right, this out of Rye Town. High-end luxury condos break ground in downtown Rye. Where's all the affordable housing that everybody talks about? Every politician comes on, Chris, affordable housing. Do you know what affordable housing is? We're building you affordable housing in a nice neighborhood. $3,000 a month for a studio. When they say affordable housing, it's relative. Einstein would love this. Well, we're putting workforce housing in. You got to make $100,000. You'll be fine. Thanks a lot. No, people making 40, 55. Where do they live? And then what happens is they get double screwed because they live so far away from the job in these towns that now they have to commute and pay those tolls. It's just no winning. It's all been, and speaking about when the president ran rigged, it's rigged. If you don't have a lot of money, it's not designed for you. All right, so those high-end luxury condos broke ground in Rye. They got a lot of high-end stuff in Rye. Good for them. Now, this is interesting. As you know, there is a new law put into effect here in New York so that people who feel that they have been wronged by sexual predators, and this law particularly involving the Catholic Church and their priests, well, evidently survivors and advocates and accused priests are finding fault with the list. Nobody's happy with it. Why is the question? This out of LOHUD this morning. Now, the example used is one ex-priest in an upstate New York diocese left the priesthood in 2000 after serving in various parishes for nearly a decade. 18 years later, the Diocese of Ogdensburg, didn't even know there was an Ogdensburg, did you? But anyway, Hosdensburg, including the man's name, James Larcher, on a list of priests accused of sexual misconduct. He moved to Vermont in 2012, got a job as a nurse. I'm going to let it go. Accused Catholic priests easily find new jobs, nurses, teachers at the University of Vermont Medical Center, where he's worked without incident ever since. The list, released in November, included the names of 28 priests found by a majority lay committee on the bishop himself, or the bishop himself, to have been credibly accused of sexual misconduct. Now, here's the problem. The ex-priest says the list robbed him of a chance to clear his name. And this is what they were complaining about. And this is a classic case, to be fair to the priests. You and we live in a society that you're presumed innocent. You're entitled to face your accuser. So that's one of the problems that people have. And now some of the people who've been abused, they're upset because they believe there are names that are not on the list. So nothing's ever perfect, but we're off to a good start. Okay, DACA. As you know, the Supreme Court is hearing DACA cases. That's the Dreamers program, people who came here as children, but they came here illegally because their parents came here illegally, and they were 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years old. Well, the Supreme Court yesterday began hearing arguments in a case challenging President Donald Trump's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, also known as DACA. And it's going to be tough because they say it looks like, based on inquiries, but you never know, they didn't vote yet, it does look like the court is going to uphold the president's, and procedurally, really, just to be fair, it's not that the people on the court are mean, but evidently it will have concluded that President Obama, when he created the program, went beyond his authority, and that would be the technicality, if in fact that happens. But most of the people, even people to the right, have a problem with DACA. I mean, have a problem with telling these people that they can't be citizens. They're here since children. They had no choice. And now they're Americans to the bone. Hopefully, there'll be a way to fix this. Okay, you recall the school shooter in South Carolina. The teen killed one student and plotted to kill dozens. And his sentencing is at hand. The hearing began yesterday for Jesse Osborne, 17, who pleaded guilty to killing his father, then firing on the Townville Elementary School playground. This back in September 28, 2016. He fatally wounded a 6-year-old boy. During the first day of the hearing, a jail investigator testified that Osborne attempted to escape, and an FBI agent presented digital evidence that Osborne plotted to kill more than 50 students. Now, this boy either gets locked up for life or he has a problem that you can fix. One wonders. The Rangers won. Again, this is getting strange. I guess the kids are all right. Their number 2 draft choice, Capo Caco. I know it's a tough name, but hey, he got another couple of goals. He won in overtime yesterday. They won 3-2. And the local boy out of Long Island, Adam Fox, I mean, they're both, one's 19, the other one's 21. It's like a kiddie show out there at the Garden. Anyway, they defeated the powerful Pittsburgh Penguins by a score of 3-2. A couple of other sports stories, and I'm going to argue with Chris, and then later on I'm going to argue with Jake when he comes in, Jake Schaefer, about this. The Post is saying today, and despite their political leanings, where they've become just they should be in a supermarket with the tabloids, because I'll show you their cover in a little while. Anyway, they want, the Mets are pushing for Jacob deGrom to win the Cy Young or win. He won 11 games. Whatever happened to you have to win? Does winning only in politics? In politics, both sides are willing to ruin themselves, their families, the planet Earth to win. And that's where you shouldn't just look to win. You should look to uphold this wonderful democracy and the checks and balances. But in baseball, in sports, winning is everything. No, Jacob, not for my money. Give me someone who actually wins ball games, please. And no, don't blame the Mets. They're like everyone else. Everybody can hit a home run. Babies come up and they hit runs. Good God. Infants could come up. They're not out of the womb yet, but yet they got a bat. Everybody hits home runs in what's becoming the rigged sport, baseball. But at least, come on, let's do something. Now, another story. Let's give it to someone who won 16 games, 18, and maybe 20 games. But probably he'll get it. It's in New York. Now, here is an interesting story, and this broke yesterday. I don't know if you heard about this, Chris, but it turns out that there's evidence now that the Houston Astros were using cameras to steal signs back in 2017. Now, here's the interesting twist. Do you know who was on the Astros, Chris? Do you know who was on the Astros in 2017?
I do not offhand.
Carlos Beltran. And now I don't know nothing. Well, you know what? That's sports. At least they're trying to win.
Remember, 2017 is when Houston beat the Yankees.
Yes.
In a Game 7 in Houston.
That's
so
exactly
Yankee fans
right.
are going to be furious about this.
They really are going to be furious, and they should. But Carlos knows nothing. Remember, Sergeant says, I know nothing. But the interesting thing about this is that, well, at least they were trying to win. Everybody won. I mean, we'll talk about this a little later, and you meet Jake when he comes in. He's our handicapper. He picks football games. He's like 10-6. He's not doing bad. He was doing a little bit better, but he bet on the Giants last week, and you know how that worked out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to introduce you to Chris, and then I'm going to have some fun with the national stories because the New York Post has once again embarrassed itself, and it's a shame because we need the press. We need people to defend the president. We need a fair impeachment inquiry. But this don't fly. This is Radio Westchester. We'll be right back with another review of the traffic. We'll talk with you and with each other about some of the national stories. Again, today is a reasonably historic day, the second time in my lifetime. It's the third that a president was in trouble. Of course, we had President Richard Nixon, who prior or as they were drawing up impeachment protocols, he resigned. And of course, President Clinton was impeached, and now this impeachment inquiry. Now, the real issue here, just to give you something to think about, it is whether or not the president should be removed, okay? And I've already said probably not. Probably let's let the voters do that. Probably let's let the Senate have the sacred duty of figuring out what is a high crime and misdemeanor. But to insult people who feel that it is an impeachable offense, that's not right either, because some people think that he has abused his power. He certainly has overreached many times, but that's why we have the impeachment process. And we say this every morning. There's a gap, and the Founding Fathers created a gap that if articles of impeachment were actually drawn up and a Congress decided to try the president, that's what impeachment is. Impeachment is not throwing him out. Impeachment is the trial. Removal is when the Senate votes either guilty or not guilty. And whatever the Senate does, even if it's wholly political, that's what the Founding Fathers wanted. So we should all step back. However, to say that what the president did is trumped up, to say it's fake, to make a mockery of every individual who was doing their duties, either as a member of the State Department or as an intelligence officer, I'm never going to abide that. Because I know some of you are upset with the positions that I take, but I'm not going to mince words there. I'll never abide that. I'll never abide a president challenging the very system that is set up to make sure he or she is not a king or a queen. We'll be right back after these words. All right, he better put the mic on. I don't know if he got coffee yet, but he'll go and get coffee inside in a little while. We are joined this morning by a longtime radio colleague. He and I worked together at WVOX for many years during my first go-round there, and before I went to WFAS, and then before I came here. Chris Conway, you remember him reading traffic, annoying me, reading news, and I just want to say good morning to him. He's going to be joining us next week. Chris Conway, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. It is great to be here.
What's it like to be in front of a mic again?
It is like getting under an old blanket.
Isn't it comfortable? Yeah. And this is an interesting studio, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Except now they can see me, which is frightening.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It worked really well at Halloween. So, see, now, as you see, and I'm handling everything myself for the time being, and we've got plenty of new sponsors coming up, plenty of podcasts. So, do you have your chops ready? You ready to read news and traffic and stuff like that again?
Absolutely.
And press all the buttons?
Yeah.
And then all the switches?
Raise levels, lower levels.
And then in the evening, chill with your, and all that?
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, welcome. I know you've been busy doing other things. I know you've done some freelance stuff and you were in TV for a while, but it's nice to see you here again.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to be back.
So I'll be sharing some of this with you, but I promised that we go back and do a little traffic and weather, and I need to increase a level, speaking of that, so that I can hear people call and yell at me when they don't agree with me, and that is very common, as you know.
Oh, yes.
But we have very honorable people who disagree with me. They only call me 4-letter words instead of 15-letter words. Well, sometimes.
That's an improvement.
That is an improvement, isn't it? All righty, let's get rolling back with this. A little music is always a good thing. All right. Let's take another look at the weather for the uninitiated. I think it's best to say that it is cold. What I do with it? I get so excited with Chris being here, I misplaced my weather. But I know what it is. Let's get to that. The weather is brought to you by our friends at United Hebrew, exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It is 7:34. Let's take a look at the weather. It is 21 degrees, and we are getting up today to, well, not probably even freezing, maybe about 30, but it's not as treacherous and calamitous as everyone says. Tonight it is going to be cold, though. It'll get down to 24 with winds out of the south at 10 miles, maybe 15 miles an hour. And tomorrow it'll begin to warm up a little bit. But today they're advising you, please get warm. Stay warm. The bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio. They did their third show yesterday at 12:30. It is posted on their website, our website, and probably on some billboard someplace. The law firm of Pena and Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic Cigars. Those are the people that bring you our picks of the week. They're a licensed retailer, big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days a week. Do you realize you can't be open 8 days a week? Because there ain't 8 days in a week, Chris.
I did not know that.
As you can see, I could still count since we last worked together. All righty. I started out by throwing, this is going to upset some people, but look. When you're a major newspaper and you want to defend the president, put a cover out there that doesn't insult your readers. And if it doesn't insult the reader needs to take a good hard look at their own intellectual capacity. Here you go. They're making this out like it's all a hoax and a game. It's not a game. When the President of the United States, and it may not be an impeachable offense, but when he clearly, and you'll see it today, watch the hearings. If you didn't have time to read the transcripts, watch the hearings. He specifically, and his minions specifically said, you got to do this, or you're not going to get your money. They linked the two. There's no question about it. Now, if you want to say it's not impeachable, that's cool. But, or if you want to say, hey, they went after him for everything, and the Mueller report was a hoax. The Mueller report wasn't a hoax. Read it. It was not a hoax. What we had was a timid prosecutor who didn't want to draw his conclusions. He laid it out this, well, we have remedies, impeachment. We have remedies, but he didn't say impeachment because his moment in history came, and he punted. Look, impeachment's not a good thing. I don't want the president to get thrown out, but if he continues to call the press a witch hunt, to call the opposition party treasonous, et cetera, et cetera. He has to be held account. That's why we have a system. But this is not an appropriate headline and first page for a major newspaper. They embarrass themselves. And when you go in, they have the mother of all shills, Mr. Goodwin. He used to be on our program several years ago, remember? But then he got page 3 in the Post. And now he makes, and look, I hope you're listening, Michael, because you were a great writer once. Now you drink the Kool-Aid. You are a diminutive Goebbels now. You keep doing what you're doing. Oh, it's a witch hunt. Give me, I wish I could. I could because we're streaming. I could curse, but I won't. Give me a break. It's not a witch hunt. I mean, do they do it with too much figure? Sure. Do they probably, when the president burps funny, do they call him on it? Yeah, and that's ridiculous. The Democrats ought not do it. But come on, let's call it the way we see it. No one ever said that pursuing President Clinton's lying about what he did with Monica Lewinsky, that wasn't a witch hunt. He did it. Well, the Whitewater may have been. So I get it. I get why they're saying that. Well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe, and I could stir it up more. What was Benghazi? You call up, people died. Yes, they did. Someone made terrible mistakes, maybe even Hillary Clinton, but they act like she wanted them dead or something. It makes no sense. Both sides witch hunt in that way. But there's a difference between just going after someone all the time and making their lives miserable, which both sides have to stop, but they won't, and going after something that's legitimate. So let's move on to a couple of other things. That'll all start today. The impeachment hearings will be carried live beginning at 10 a.m. They will stream on YouTube and various news sites. And here's where you can, well, please draw your own conclusions. Now, the way it looks, and I'm trying to be fair here, is the tone that I noticed in the newspapers today. The supporters of Trump are saying, well, you know, even Nancy Pelosi really doesn't want to impeach. They just want to make you... they just want to pour bad information out about the president so that you won't vote for him. Yeah, I'm sure they're right. Okay. But draw your own conclusions. Don't let someone nullify your opinion. Either way. You know, don't make him guilty because, once again, even if I don't think there's any dispute as to whether he did this, but it doesn't mean he should be removed from office. You need to be fair-minded. You need to listen and hear everything. And you even need to listen to the Jim Jordans, who's half out of his flippin' mind, that he'll just call everybody some name. But by the way, that's so adolescent. The minute they go to name calling, Mr. President, the minute they go to name calling, you know that they are doing too much of this. Too much of this nonsense. The Post ought to be ashamed of themselves. Anyway, going back to that. PBS, C-SPAN 3, cspan.org, C-SPAN Radio will air the hearings. NBC, ABC, CBS plan to interrupt regular broadcasting with special reports on the hearings. Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC plan more extensive coverage. And if you are one of those supporters for the president who would vote for him even if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, for the sake of your sanity, and since we love our listeners, watch Fox News. They probably will have a witch up in the corner and a little icon or something like that. Yeah, I've had it with them too. So we move on. Let's open up the telephones. 914-222-3141. Yes, Chris, we still do. We still do some politics. It's been. We reached a point even at my old station, and it was. People were upset with me because I believe the president's done some good things. We got a good economy. I understand why he was elected, and the people on the far left, they are. If they get elected, it'll be another bunch of fake people. Okay, but let's see. We got our first call of the day. Hopefully, I'm doing that. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester. Thank you for the call.
I want to welcome Chris back before I speak to the knucklehead.
Hey, Chris, say hello to Anthony.
Anthony, it's good to talk to you again.
And he's been an honorable opponent on some of this stuff. He straightens me out like he always did when I go too far. But he's been a friend of the program, and he hates me sometimes. But anyway, I'm glad he welcomed you back. What do you think of that? What do you think of this find, Anthony? Before you beat me up.
What find?
Him. Bringing Chris back.
Oh, Chris is golden.
Yeah,
Chris is golden. There's no doubt about it.
And you know he will abuse me.
That's why I had to call to welcome him back.
Well, thank you.
First of all, you leave a lot to be abused, even in your short stature.
Go ahead. No, I'm open for it. You'll straighten me out.
Hey,
You always
listen,
do.
you as usual and predictable, naturally you bashed the president.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I no longer get upset about it anymore because it's going to play out. I think most rational people, I won't say reasonable, I'll say rational, understand that it's not really a impeachable offense at worst. So this is just a lesson in futility. I understand there's a quote nuclear option unquote where they don't even have to bring it up in the Senate. I think it's just grandstanding for the 2020 election.
Well, I agree with you on that.
I think they actually fell into Trump's trap.
Say more
because
about that.
win, lose, or draw, he loves the public arena.
Yes, that's true.
And the Democrats will not escape unscathed, even if the impeachment is voted to go to the Senate. The Democrats will not emerge unscathed.
Apropos of that, I think we're very close. I mean, this probably will hurt the president somewhat, but if the Senate is inclined not to remove him, and I don't think they will or should remove him, by the way, I agree with you on that.
See, that's the difference, Bob. When you say it, you should say it with conviction that I don't think they should remove him. Instead of leaving that question. See, that's what when I talk about your prejudice, that's what I'm talking about.
But it's good that you call me on it. But you know why? Because I do believe, but I've said it many times, and I said it in my monologue, I do believe that it will be the sacred right of the Senate, and in this case the Republicans, because if you can't convince the opposition party to cross over. See, I get crazy when they call it a witch hunt and a hoax and all of that and go that far. But no, if they don't do it, that's why I leave it open. I mean, I don't have access to their information, and I don't really know what the hell. I have no idea anymore what high crime and misdemeanor is. But maybe I need to say that with more conviction. No, I don't want him. I don't want him removed from office based on this one, because something you said a while back, Anthony, that I agree with. I'm sure he's not the first person to do this. And then you had Obama saying, wait till after the election.
Well, that's proof that he's not the first president.
So,
and you also have Biden himself with the taped interview.
Well, we need to find out what he did and what he said. I agree. That's why this, if you
Bob,
recall,
I sent it to you.
I saw that. No, but what I'm saying is, when his chance to be in the dock, if in fact he goes there, that's why I mentioned yesterday this guy Dunham from Connecticut. This guy's supposed to be for motherhood and against sin. And again, I think back to when you and others were saying, hey, look at the FISA warrants. They're going to look at all that now, and they're going to look at it fairly.
Absolutely, and they should have before they did all what they've done. That's my point, Bob. They turn a blind eye to what doesn't help them.
Well, that is true. See, and I think the hardest part that all of us have is separating out the aspect of this, and that's why I kept it in, the aspect of these things that are witch hunts, and the aspect. In other words, it's almost like you made this mistake, and now you have to go through the crucible. And
yeah, but that's not, Bob. Let's understand something. The current president is being held to a different standard than the presidents before who went through impeachment.
I think that this president, though, has exceeded, if nothing else, certain conventions and protocols. He's very atypical, and he invites it.
He's very atypical of a presidential candidate, period.
Yeah, yes.
So why wouldn't his actions be atypical?
I understand that, but some of his actions, as bad as the press can be, calling them the enemy of the people, calling people who disagree with him traitors and things of that nature, it irks people, Anthony. It gets them to be unreasonable, and probably myself included.
What do people, and especially the press, call the president? There's no respect for the office. Forget about the man. This is what annoys me. Listen, I didn't care for Obama, but I didn't attack him personally.
I don't think I think with some of his executive orders, in fact, you're going to see DACA probably fail in the next week or so. Some of his executive orders exceeded power, but he was not.
And that's fine, and that'll be decided, but that's the process. But let's understand something. He made an attempt to do something with DACA. What did our elected legislators do?
I totally yield to the senator from Somers on this one. Nothing.
And let's understand something. All of the impeachment processes before What happened? There was a special investigator appointed that then reported
Well, in
to
that
the
case,
committee.
if you remember the
Okay,
case of
not the committee becoming the special investigator, and
Well-
not the committee coaxing the whistleblower. And now, I don't know if you read it today, but the whistleblower is now being brought up on ethic charges because they raised money.
I got it right here, and I was going to go to that next before you call, but I figured I'd take your call. Yes, I have that. He had a GoFundMe page,
Right.
and we're going to
So
look into that.
they've defied the process illegally at every step
You
of
know
the way.
what, though?
There's been
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They haven't allowed the president to have his lawyers present at the hearings. They're not going to allow him to have them to ask questions of the witnesses. They've already denied at least 2 of the Republican witnesses. You talk about Biden, they won't allow Biden's son to come before the committee. Why is that?
Well, for obvious reasons, for political reasons.
But
He got
that's my
rich.
point. It's not an open and fair process.
But you know what? Once it gets out in the open, now it will become open. Fair. I don't know how fair these things are, but Anthony, even you yourself know.
Bob, how can it be open if you can't confront the very person that this is all spinning around?
For the same reason that you have grand jury hearings are also kept private, and it's so that people can't set up their testimony. Look, if there are
But
people,
wait, ho! You're making an unfair parallel because the grand jury has already met. They did what they were going to do. Now we're going into court.
okay, what now?
So in court, the accused has the right to defend, like you say with Murray. Don't worry, Murray. They can present any defense they want to cloud up the issue.
Well, yes, like the New York Post did in their cover today.
I didn't
I
see the
thought
post,
of
so I
that.
can't comment on
I
that.
can show you. Now, you try not to look at my face because it will hurt you, but here it is.
It hurts me even when it smiles.
I hate you. I really do. Look, here's something, though. Let me ask you this, Anthony, because I understand your points and why things are never even-handed like this. But if these people in the State Department, and you'll see them today, and I'm sure you've read the transcripts, if they, in their convention, if what we do with other governments, if this is considered, and I don't want to use the word illegal because no one has said that it is, although some people have, even Napolitano thinks it is. But if a president is doing
Napolitano scorned because he didn't get the seat on the Supreme Court. Come on, let's call it.
You think
let's
that's what
call
it is?
What it is?
But he's past his sell-by date, isn't he? Anyway,
It is what it is, Bob.
But if you get caught, and these people heard the president doing this quid pro quo, and I'm gonna take your attack from alleged. Thank you. Okay.
Be even-handed.
No, but how can
If it was the other way around, you would actually put alleged
I
in
was
there, and you
quoting
know
them.
it.
I was speaking there. I was speaking for them. If they believed that the president was breaking rules, that the president was inappropriately using a foreign power, if they believe that, as I think you'll hear today, and again, it doesn't mean he's guilty of anything, but if they believe it was inappropriate, it's their duty to report it. And now I'm going to go to the political place.
Okay, now let's go step by step. By process, who are they supposed to report it to?
They should be reporting it to the Intelligence Committee.
No, you're absolutely wrong. They should be reporting it to their superiors, not running to Adam Schiff.
Oh, I see your point.
You're absolutely wrong.
Didn't they go? Did they go to the Inspector General?
They did. They violated the process from day one. Okay, the whistleblower was coached. They were interviewed by the committee. I don't know if it was Schiff personally, but it may have been staffers. Long before the complaint was officially filed.
You know, this reminds me of something.
He was coached on how to word the complaint.
Anthony, I'm gonna do a little reversal on you here, and I remember I did this with a very brilliant guy that worked for me, and he was debating a conclusion that I come to.
Well, don't expect me to be brilliant, that's for sure.
Well, that makes 2 of us. But are you? I mean, it's pretty hard to deny when you read the transcripts whether he's innocent or not. And again, everybody's presumed, and I don't even know if he's guilty of anything. I don't know what crime he broke. But if this is inappropriate, if the process is even flawed, you can't deny what took place and people's reaction to it.
Bobby, I told you from day one, this is done by every president, monarch, whoever around the world, okay? But let's understand this. He's not an idiot. He may be stupid, but he's not an idiot.
Oh, I don't think he's stupid.
He didn't amass money for being an idiot.
No.
So he framed it, and this is where they're hanging their hat, okay? He framed it as reopening an investigation that never came to a conclusion. Why? Because it was illegally stopped by then Vice President Biden.
What was stopped by Biden?
The investigation into Hunter Biden and the corruption in the Ukraine and the gas company.
I'm not going to refute that because I don't know. But when the president says,
But again,
I want you to get to a microphone.
I know you love books and you read, but evidently you don't have time to watch the 30-second video that I sent you.
I did watch it.
Biden admitted that there was a corruption investigation going on and that he himself stopped it. Now, if you didn't read enough to understand that that investigation was about corruption on the gas company, that Biden's son, who had flunked out of the service months before for cocaine use and got appointed to the...
I have no doubt that he benefited from being the vice president's son, and I have no doubt that he got the benefit of his father's position. But in almost every account that I've dug up and read, they say there's other than currying favor with the vice president, that there's no real scandal there. I mean, there was no there. I mean,
did you watch the video I sent you?
Yes,
Biden
I did.
Threatened to cut off their aid. Just the same thing that Trump's being accused of. What is wrong with you? Seriously.
Why was he not prosecuted?
You tell me. I'll tell you. You know.
Tell
me.
Who
was the Secretary of State or who was the president?
Well, Obama was the president. But still, with the but the Republicans were in power.
You think Obama's going to prosecute his own VP?
No, but the Republicans.
Why do you think Obama hasn't come out and endorsed him yet?
And the Republicans were in power.
Not, Bob, that was not when it happened.
They had the Senate.
They were in power the first 2 years.
So this happened after that time.
So I mean, come on. It's not going to happen. And besides the fact, I don't want. I'm not 100% sure of that. But let's put it this way. The Republicans realized that that wasn't going to amount to anything. You can't. That's not an impeachable offense, Bob. And the only reason I'm upset about it is because they're not holding the current president to the same standards as they held the vice president then.
No, you mean the reverse, that they didn't hold the vice president to the same standard that they're trying to hold the president to. I'll help you out with that one.
I said the current president. They're not holding the current president to the same standards.
Oh, I see how you're saying that. I thought you were being hard on the current president in this one context.
No.
654, Anthony's on the phone. You're listening to Radio Westchester. We're debating the impeachment process ongoing with the president of the United States.
Let's bring it down to square one. Okay.
Shoot.
We now have evidence that in July of 2017, before the president took office, there's a tweet that there's a coup that has begun to remove him from office. It's the same people that are behind this current impeachment.
See,
for 2.5 years, they've done nothing but focus on impeachment. They've neglected to do the people's business, and they're utter and total failures, both sides.
Both sides, you say? What do you mean by both sides?
The Democrats and the Republicans, and the Independents, and whatever else parties have been elected.
But Anthony, I want you to think like a politician, which is
a
curse. No, I know, but which is a curse.
If I thought like a politician, I'd be a millionaire today.
Well, you would be. But see, here's the issue, and let's forget who we agree with and who we don't agree with. You know that the way the process works, you don't even have to take off your kimono. All you need to do is have a rip in the robe, and they're going to go after you. That's the way the system is. That's our system. It's horrible, and it's corrupt. Listen, we got to go and do news again at the top of the hour. Before you go,
I don't disagree with you, Bob, but it's a question of how big the rip is.
No, yes,
okay?
I do understand.
I can't even see your crack, let alone your cheek.
You know, please, mister, before you go, can I get you to weigh in on something? Jacob deGrom with 11 wins, should he get another Cy Young?
I don't think he deserves the second one, no.
Thank you. See, I lose one and I win one. You got anything to say, Chris?
I did miss Anthony just filleting you up.
Oh, shut up. Goodbye, Anthony. Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for showing the other half of the issue. It's very, very interesting. Again, I don't think there's any. I know Frank, and a great caller. Frank used to call a lot. He finally stopped calling because he thought it was a silent coup. Hopefully not. I never thought that. As I was just suggesting to Anthony, the president has a lot of rips and invites a lot of what happens. See, my beef with him isn't that I think he should be impeached. I think that he, I don't think he's competent. I think he's a terrible statesman. But that for another day. We do have to go to the top of the hour. Let's look at what's coming up today. Speaking of, and this ought to get people upset, but Vince is coming back today at 7:20. We're going to talk with him. He and I lived through, and I don't know if you know, Vince has been calling us pretty regularly. He and I started on radio together many years ago, and we've involved him a little more in the show. But what made Vince interesting, Chris, is a guy was an agnostic for 40 years. All of a sudden, he's going to church.
Really?
He says he found God, either in the glove compartment or the trunk of his car. We don't know. But he and I lived through and followed the Watergate hearings completely. So it should be interesting to get some feedback from him. Jeannie Zaino, Professor Jeannie Zaino joins us at 7:35, and she'll have a lot to say today. A.J. Woodson from Black Westchester Magazine will be with us today. We've got a bit of a coup tomorrow at 9 o'clock. You know, we're bringing on 9 o'clock. When I say a coup, during the campaign for the mayor of Mount Vernon, and we let it go because Richard had to step down because he pled guilty to a misdemeanor. But naturally, it was very convenient for all concerned, and we let them have it out between each other. That is the Sean Patterson Howard and Mr. Mr. Andre Wallace. But naturally, it was bash Richard. Richard did this. This was corrupt. That was corrupt. That was corrupt. Well, as you know, and you know from your days with us before, kind of like the Marrone murder, we don't let these things go. We keep going back. So we're bringing the mayor on to tell his side of the story and to continue to press for the investigations that talk about the kinds of things Anthony was talking about. Now, Richard had his problems, and we've called them and him on that. But also, Richard was pursuing corruption, and all hell broke loose and came down on him. For example, you should see some of the numbers. There are millions of dollars unaccounted for in the IDA. And that was before he got there. And there's still millions of dollars unaccounted for, not the IDA, excuse me, in the Urban Renewal Agency, of slush fund, hell pot. And we're not going to let it go. They're going to have to blow up the radio station, but we're not going to let it go. So we're going to ask A.J. Woodson about that, and he should have some fun with that. And we are actually very hopeful. The woman who got elected, Sean Patterson Howard, really interesting woman. I think she'd be a good breath of fresh air there. But even she's going to have to start getting real with what's going on in that Urban Renewal Agency, and let's hope they won't attack her the way they did Richard, although Richard wasn't very good at making friends. Ivar Hayden, you remember Ivar from District 4 here in New Rochelle. And Harlan Ullman joins us at 9 o'clock. I don't know if you remember Harlan at the end of our 10. No, actually, I got Harlan when I was at WFAS. He is literally the planet's #1 go-to guy for national security. And he advisor to NATO, advisor to the Atlantic Council, one of those people out there who's on a first-name basis with most of the prime ministers, foreign ministers, and generals on the planet. So very interesting guy. We're going to get his take on how this impeachment affects us and whether and also, but more importantly, about foreign policy. What can and should a president do in those kinds of relationships? How bad really is it to bring a foreign power in? Should it be impeachable? And that's why I leave that open. I don't know enough. It's above my pay grade. So that's what's coming up today. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to go back to the weather. We're going to cover the headlines, and then we'll start taking calls. And it's 21 degrees. You all stay right there. This is Radio Westchester. We are live at the train station. It is 7 o'clock on the button. 7:01 now. We are back. It is 7:01. Welcome It is Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone on Radio Westchester, the radio station at the New Rochelle train station. We're here. It's 21 degrees. It's a cold one. It's going to be cold throughout the day today, getting down to 24 tonight. Now, remember, you can listen live on radiowestchester.com. In fact, you can even tell that little, I forget what you call her, Esther, whatever that little box is, Echo. What is that thing called, Chris, where people talk to it? You don't remember?
Alexa, but I think Esther is a better name for it.
Alexa. Anyway, tell her, because she likes to listen to me, that you want to listen to radiowestchester.com. Also, you can watch us live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope. Let's go to the weather, and the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 21 right now, going to get up to 34. That'll be the high today. We think it will get above freezing. It's very sunny and nice outside, but breezy. Tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature, again, getting down to 24. The wind will be out of the northwest. I said the south before. I made a mistake. That's a Thursday. 5 to 10 miles an hour. Thursday, that's tomorrow. Mostly cloudy. The temperature will be 43 degrees. The wind will be out of the south, 5 to 10 miles per hour. And mostly sunny skies on Friday. The high will be 49. Saturday, as we look forward to the weekend, lots of sunshine and breezy. The high will be 38 degrees. The overnight low will be 25 degrees. Now, I've got all kinds of stuff. This is, here it is, right in front of me when Anthony called. Something that Anthony mentioned was in the paper today. The whistleblower whose allegations touched off House Democrats' impeachment inquiry may have violated federal law by indirectly soliciting more than $250,000 from mostly anonymous sources on a GoFundMe page. A complaint to the intelligence community's inspector general alleges. The complaint, which was filed anonymously last week and obtained by Fox News, well, there you go. My Fox News, maybe I should burn this, alleges that donations from roughly 6,000 individuals clearly constitute gifts to a current intelligence official that may be restricted because of the employee's official position. The GoFundMe pitch has raised more than $227,000 as of Tuesday afternoon and has a goal of raising $300,000 to cover his legal fees. It was started by John Tyre, a former State Department official who came forward in 2014 as a whistleblower seeking to publicize the government's electronic surveillance tactics. Ty also is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit law firm Whistleblower Aid. So this money gets raised to protect whistleblowers. And I know one of the dynamics is you always want to confront your confuser. That would be me. But one of the reasons we have the whistleblower laws is because of all the political, public, and legal and physical threats that can befall a whistleblower. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, some of the other stories, and I got to reach down here to my left. We're very economical when it comes to space and time. We covered this with Carlos Beltran. So many stories, so little time. All right, the phones have reopened, 914-222-3141. You can join the conversation. You can talk about Donald Trump. You can talk about what you want. What I want to hear you talk about is the fact that you can't even move. You can't go from side to side without getting ripped off by some government agency. See, these are one of the reasons we often talk about when I do defend aspects of Trump's presidency, why he got elected. The middle class is being destroyed step by step. The working class is being marginalized. So anyway, we have another call, and we're going to go to that call. Let's go. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Bob. Tom from Pelham.
Thomas, welcome. Are you still in Aruba?
Yeah, I was in the ocean already. It's about high 70s so far. Should top out in the mid 80s. Beautiful, sunny, clear.
You know,
I'll be taking a massage.
I hate
Sorry?
You know, I already hate Anthony. Now I hate you.
I have a massage scheduled for 4 p.m. before the sunset cruise.
Oh,
What's happening in New York? Is it cold? I heard it's really cold.
It was 21 degrees, okay? I froze my cookies.
Oh, that's not terrible.
Well, that's what I said. You know, people go too far. They were like, oh my God, it's going to be the Antarctic. It's only 21 degrees. I mean, it's wintertime. Well, it's almost wintertime. It's sort of early. But it's a beautiful sunny day here in the neighborhood. And since I'm a hockey player, I like the cold weather. I want to put my skates on and find a lake.
Are the Twin Lakes or Beachmont Lake
It's not frozen
over yet?
No, although I understand years ago. Now, there only once in the 15 years I'm up here, only once did I see people actually skating on it. It's unfortunate that we don't have that kind of cold weather more often. I could be at the lake every day.
Oh, I skated. I skated on it
You have skated
back in the
when you were
back in the 60s.
when you were a little boy, when you were.
I was a little guy, yeah. About 8, 9 years old, I used to skate right there on Beachmont Lake and then the Twin Lakes.
That's
Yeah, it was
really
fun.
cool. That does sound like fun.
Yeah.
So, what is
Yeah.
the temperature where you are?
Right now it's probably about 78, but it'll warm up later, probably into the mid 80s.
Poor you.
You know, it was so Bob.
Yes,
it was
sir.
so warm around 3 p.m. yesterday that my wife and I had to get off the beach. It was my God, it was so warm.
Did you call up? Let me call Bob and torture him. Was that your plan? Hey, listen, your Islanders couldn't be playing better, huh? Boy,
Oh yeah, and tonight they're playing Toronto. I wonder if the fans are going to work over to Varus or if that was just sort of a one shot deal.
You know, the only reason I hope it was a one, I was glad when they did it the last time. I know they went a little over the top, but as I've always said, if he was going to go, he should have indicated that a little more because the team could have gotten something for him. But you know what?
Oh yeah.
They're doing better despite what he did. Hey, I want you to say hello to someone. You weren't listening. He used to ride shotgun for me and engineer my shows back in about 5-6 years ago, before I went to WFAS. Chris Conway, say hello to Tom from Pelham. As you can tell, a very annoying caller from Pelham.
I do think the Aruba Weather Report should be a sponsor event.
Oh, really? Really? Thank you very much. So anyway,
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Tom.
He's a huge Islander fan, Chris. Huge.
Oh, he's got to be thrilled with.
Thrilled isn't the word. I mean, he's down. He's that's why he's in Aruba. He's been winning bets. He's a
I
real.
look at that 12-3-1 record and I pinch myself, Bob.
Well, you know what? You shouldn't have to because you got a good coach, and you see they don't have all these big flustery names, but they play in a system. It is a sport. It's not cattle running up and down the plains. And did you see the Rangers? They're finally getting their act together a little bit, but they're way too young. Their defense is porous. When they start running up and down the rink, it's like a shootout at OK Corral.
What do you think about that coach the Rangers have, Bob?
You know what? I like him because he's patient, but I also feel he's got orders from above to play the kids. Although he does one thing he did do, which I find very interesting. Now, Tom, you know the game. There's like, like if you take your temperature, there's a temperature, and 98.6 is normal, and there are different things that are symptoms of something. Well, a guy that wasn't supposed to make the team because he makes $4 million, he used to be a top 4 defenseman, and he had some trouble, so they sent him to the minors last year for 15 games. He made the team this year, Brad Smith. But it shows how the game has changed. Smith made the team for 2 reasons. A, he's tough. B, he's a good skating defenseman. But C, they use him at forward because their forwards are soft. But guess what? Guess who the first guy to get the call is for defense when they kill a penalty? Brad Smith. And you don't see that on hardly any other team. And that shows you what the coach really thinks of his defenseman defensively, that he has a guy $4 million just to kill penalties and has to be the tough guy on his fourth line. That is indicative of the deficiencies of that team. They're not very good defensively in their own end. And yes, it's wonderful. These young bunnies carry the puck out of the end. But at the end of the day, when you get closer to the playoffs, you can't carry out of your end. You got to pass it out of your end. And which means you got to get to the puck first, win battles, win one-on-ones. And there's a thing called a gap. I don't want to get inside hockey, but you got to play your gaps well. And which means that the defenseman, when he's backing in, he can't be so far from the player that he gets a chance to take a shot. So you have to stay close, but at the same time, not let him get around you. It's very difficult. It's one of the hardest things in hockey, and the Rangers are terrible at it. They have terrible gap control.
Well, what we call breaking it down, Bob.
Yeah, no, but anyway, but still,
Breaking it down.
but I didn't answer. Do I think he's a good coach? Yes, but I also think he has the handicap of being forced to play. I mean, I've never heard of 21-year-olds playing on a major league hockey team. I mean, it's, the breastfeed these kids. So, how long are you going to be in Aruba so I can continue my hate of you?
I'll be back a week from today.
Oh, you're just going to be there another whole week?
Yeah, I just got here on Monday.
Oh, gee, that's right. Yeah, okay, you just got there on Monday.
Yeah.
Is your wife there?
Don't rush it for me, Bob.
Is your
my
wife?
Yeah, my wife left. My wife is here, of course. She left to go for breakfast. So soon I will depart from this conversation. But I was happy to hear Anthony, and as always, he's right on target.
No, just take it easy.
Adam Schiff is now talking about bribery, that the president bribed.
Well, it's a very poor choice of words. Bribery means that you offered them something of value. He's getting uber technical to besmirch the president. I agree with that.
Yeah, Bob, this is such a witch hunt.
Actually,
really
it's not a witch hunt. The persistence of everything has that
witch
element.
Hunt. I'm sick of it.
Want to see me get him upset?
We jump.
Now, Benghazi
from
was a
one
witch
thing
hunt.
to another. None of it's working. We're going to move to something else in about 2 months from now, because this is not going to work either.
Benghazi was a
They
witch
want
hunt.
to investigate something. Why don't they go after Vice
won't take the
President
bait.
Biden? He
won't-
actually is on record.
But you know what? It's like when Gotti kept getting acquitted. It doesn't mean he didn't do it. It means they couldn't prove it. I mean, look, of course they're going after him with a vengeance. When a guy could even just trip and they go after you. But when you trip or you do something inappropriate, you welcome it. See, I don't think he's going to get removed from office, and I don't think he should be, but I do think he should have to account for his behavior and the things that he does. I mean, you've got State Department people that he appointed. His State Department is going to testify against him today, his own State Department. And it doesn't mean he should be removed from office, Thomas. But anyway, Thomas.
Bob, the next time there's a Democrat president, be ready.
Well, we already had it. Do you remember Benghazi? Do you remember Whitewater?
Yeah, but I'm saying.
You won't take the bait, will you? I'm sorry. Forgive me. I've been winking at my friend Conway over here because I thought I could bait you with. Well,
you like winking at guys, huh?
No. Oh, you have your fastball today. Thank you so much for calling.
All right, Bob. I got to go to the beach and the pool now. I'll see you later.
If people could see my face. Thank you very much for the call, Thomas. My best. Travel safely. Enjoy yourself. You're a hard-working real estate man. Take care. Thomas, you see, folks, and one of the things we try and do here, and I wish it would be a lesson for others, not that we do anything perfect, but the first two calls are Trump supporters. And I give them their day. We can have a conversation and not hate each other. Anthony's for my money, and he sometimes beats the living daylights out of me from his point of view. But I would trust him with my grandkids, and for people to allow this stuff to affect their friendships and not have a conversation, and sometimes it gets heated. It's like when women fight over me. You have to be able to understand this. You have to be able to put yourself in their position. No, what's the matter, Chris? You're not buying any of this. All right, it's 7:15. I think I did miss a call here somewhere along the line. Place your current call on. Oh, here it is. Da, 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 da. No good is going to come of this. Did I miss that call? Are you there? Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
Yeah, I have the stick between my teeth. I'm trying to bite my tongue here.
Oh, I was trying to bait him, and he wouldn't take the bait.
Please, that's why I called. I'll take the bait. But please, don't ever try and bring that in when you're talking about 4 dead Americans.
No, but I understand that there was 4 dead Americans.
I know you're talking about the hearings. I understand that. But Bob, in my opinion, you're disrespecting the people that gave you.
Well, that I don't want to do. I hear you.
That's my opinion for what's worth. And maybe I'm being oversensitive.
You know what? You
know how I am about these.
You're being sensitive, but I will defer to that. Well done. But I do want you to know what my intention was. My intention was just to get his goal.
I understand your intention, but see the way you spoke about me, and I'm speaking about you, and people who may be out there listening don't understand our relationship. Okay, and if they're listening, they could actually be turned off by that.
Well, okay. Well, they shouldn't be.
You understand
yeah.
what I'm
Yes,
saying? That's
yes.
all I'm saying.
No, but hey, thank you for that. But again, I realize that, and you know how I feel about those kinds of things. You heard me on
No,
Veterans
I
Day, I'm
understand,
sure.
and that's why I'm not screaming and yelling and telling you I'm going to turn you off and never listen to you again. I understand where it came from, but my point
No,
is, I just think that people
I
who
hear
don't
you.
have that understanding,
That's true.
and it offended me a little bit, a little bit because again, the four dead people, but. Again, it's only a little bit because I know you in the context you were putting it in.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to bait him, and he wouldn't take it. The
Yeah, no, I
SOP.
understand.
Hey, by the way, you just sounded like no. You insulted him just a little bit. Do you remember what movie I'm talking about?
Just a wee bit. Just a wee bit.
The drinks are on the house. The drinks are
Let's
on.
go up on the roof.
Hey, do you want to see? I'm glad you called back, Chris. You want to see that new movie coming out, The Irishman? It's supposed to be great.
Yes, I've heard.
And you know who they say stole the movie a little bit? Joe Pesci.
Oh, yeah?
That he played him a little closer to this mic. It's a little different than the others we had. It's that he does a very subtle anger this time. Anthony, that's a movie we got to watch when it gets to Netflix.
Subtle. I can't imagine Pesci being subtle
I
about
know,
anything.
but that's what they said, and
I guess that's why he stole the movie, or out of character for what someone would expect.
Well, do you remember him in the Lethal Weapon movies? He was as funny as all get all. In fact, I was reading something about The Irishman and about that. I guess it was the Times or the Post did a great review about the new movie, and they were talking about how people forget how he's able to change characters, and he got that thing. Okay. He got that from I think it was certain salespeople who, when they were approached by customers, and they go, okay, give me a minute, and that's where he got that from. It's very funny. In fact, do you remember this? Dance like you dance for the telephone, Anthony. Or I like the one, who gets bleeped? Leo gets bleeped. Remember Lethal Weapon 2 when he says, you always get bleeped when you go through the drive-through. Someone asked me the other day.
All right, brother, be good.
You too. You don't sound like you're from Brooklyn. I said, you got a problem with what I said? So yeah, we can do that. That was good. Yeah, he always has to remind me of that. That's true. Benghazi wound up with 4 dead Americans, and that's a horrible, horrible thing. All right, Vince is coming up next. We're going to get his take on what was going on, but we do want to share with you these programs today in the top of the hour, supported by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Dominic's Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And remind you about this. Now, we haven't even had our full-fledged grand opening yet as we add shows and other things, but we remind you that after that grand opening at nighttime, we will have virtual reality here in the studio. All of our equipment, as much as it is, it's on rollers and goes to the side, and we set up for virtual reality. And you come in and you can live in a whole nother planet, Chris. You can do that. Or we can take virtual reality to you, two separate virtual reality constructions, if you will. So you can have 2 people playing at the same time. It's absolutely fantastic. Testing it, we took it to the Best of Westchester, and it was very popular there. In fact, our friends at Pepe Automotive Group sponsored us, and we brought it there. And also we brought it to a couple of other places. And it always resulted in people saying, why don't you take it out to my next party? What's good, see, you'd like this, Chris, because you're an abusive person. The best part isn't just when you play it. It's the people watching. Because you're over there doing all kinds of gyrations because you see things other people don't. And the people surrounding get to watch on TV what you're really dealing with, and it's hysterical. So if you're interested in it, you can call us at 914-727-2726. And now here we go. All these people calling in. Da-da-da-da-da. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. It's Vince.
Hey, Vince, say hello. Do you remember Chris Conway at all?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. Chris, you may remember him. He was there in the very beginning even before you were there, actually, years ago. Vince Russo, of course, found God in his glove compartment. And all right, I want to get down to cases. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you today is we had sort of a shared experience, and we've been fortunately alive long enough to have totally lived through Watergate in all its glory. And what do you remember from that time, and what do you think is different about what will take place today at 10 o'clock?
Well, I remember from that time going into work bleary-eyed because we watched gavel-to-gavel coverage every single night. And I think that what's going to be different this time is it's totally partisan. I mean, no matter what comes out, each side is going to stick to their own position. And I don't think, even if they have a videotape of President Trump shooting a guy in the head, that the Republicans are going to vote to impeach him.
Well, that's
no matter what comes out.
And you know, something that I do need to be reminded of, and certainly Anthony and Tom do it well, that, and it's so hard to separate, and your comment on this, the wheat from the chaff, which is, by the way, that's a train. We're at the train station. See Chris, the train in the background. I see. This is my, now. I got to put my opinion in, and then put a little fact around it. My opinion is that they have something legitimately to investigate. But the sad thing is that even if they didn't, they would torture this president. What say you to that?
Well, I think it goes to Tom's comment, and his comment was, "Wait till there's a Democrat president and see what we do to him." You know,
but they did.
These processes should be reserved for instances where there is reasonable expectation of some high crimes and misdemeanors. It shouldn't be, just because the opposing party is in office that all of a sudden they start investigating every little single thing that's going on.
Or that they ever did. I mean, go back to Whitewater, man. Whitewater was an investigation about a real estate deal in Arkansas that wound up with a woman with a funny nose admitting that she had an affair with the president, and then he denied it, and then Monica Lewinsky. What the hell did they have to do with Whitewater?
Well, they didn't have anything to do with it, but that was the genesis of all of these inquiries. Now it is this political climate where it's no matter what the circumstances are, we have to get the other side.
Absolutely.
When we were watching Watergate, there were people who were considered the loyal opposition. They were considered members of the opposing party, but they were working in the best interest of the country in conjunction with those on the other side of the aisle. We don't have that anymore.
Or even their rhetoric was, James Baker, the other one. Remember, he famously said, "What did the president know and when did he know it?" Now we have people that say, the president didn't say what he said. He said that he denied later, but then said it was okay, but it's not okay because he wasn't there, but then he was there and said it was okay. I mean, it's so different. And even if that was rhetoric, that's the kind of respect that is gone.
Well, it's totally gone, and it's this hyper-partisanship. I mean, no matter what side you're looking at, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, it is a climate of let's just try and get the other side. We're not here to do anything for the country. We're not here to promote the business of the people. We're here to just get the other side, no matter what that might be.
In fact, what I maintain is that now it's all about winning, and they don't care about the truth. They don't care. You know what we've become inured to, though? We as a people are no longer offended by things that we're offended by adolescent, he called me an idiot, quote unquote. But we're not offended by some of the things that either side does. Now, I'm going to aggravate you, but I have to do this. Say what you will about Hillary Clinton, and there's a lot to say that people don't like, but she has been so vilified and characterized, she's not even a real person anymore. How does that happen in this democracy? I mean,
well, I think it's deserved.
Well, see, yeah, but I knew you would say that, but it probably wasn't. That's my point. But yet we have a same thing with Trump. I mean, I'm sure Trump's nowhere near as bad as, maybe 60%. But we once we get somebody in our hooks, we create a narrative about them. I mean, we actually had people, and I had them call my shows, Vince, that Hillary Clinton is running a prostitution ring out of a pizzeria in Virginia. Really?
Right. I mean, that. Yeah, a lot of that is crazy stuff, but a lot of stuff is actually real.
What's that? What's real?
they ran an influence peddling and money laundering scheme out of that so-called foundation.
Well,
Both of them were making
how come the
millions of dollars.
Maybe they did, but how come the Republicans didn't? I mean, they attacked them rhetorically. How come they didn't get the Inspector General or whomever, the AG, to go after them? Certainly the AG.
Beats the heck out of me. I don't know why they didn't do that.
Maybe
You know,
because
they were-
maybe it was a nothing burger. Now I'm saying maybe. I don't know. Clearly it was fuzzy. But what I'm saying is whether it's true or not isn't my point. They created a caricature out of this woman. I mean, she's not even a human being. You could
Well,
go.
yeah, I mean,
look out now. But that's what our politics have become. And again, Anthony was right. People died in Benghazi, but we take any issue and we will destroy the person on the other end. And my point that I was trying to get over with some of the callers before is all you need is pretext. You don't even need the real thing.
well, that's true. But my comment about this being hyper partisan not only applies to Republican versus Democrat, but it also applies within each of the parties. Look at the people who are being elected these days, and how the whole temperament is. If you don't agree within the party with my extreme views, then you're not a loyal party member, and subsequently you're not a loyal American. How do we elect these people like this Ocasio-Cortez woman? I mean, it's ridiculous, and people on the right as well, who are just so extreme in their views, will not even entertain, talking to the other side and working with the other side, and then they have such extreme views, and then they say, "See, the other side doesn't want to work with us. They don't want to," and what they mean is the other side doesn't want to agree with what we agree with.
Well, that's true.
So
Do you know?
if you look at people that are even the presidential candidates, I mean, there's only one or two people out of all those Democrats who's in any way moderate. Buttigieg seems like the most moderate of
But
the
he's so
group.
young. He's probably the most qualified intellectually, but he's just so light on experience. And I don't mind. There was no double entendre there, by the way. But light on experience, though. No, I'm serious. It was not. Stop. But he's not.
I'm not saying anything.
You're going to hell. It's 7:28. I think he's the most qualified. In fact, yesterday, I don't think he's ready to be president, though. I was quite shocked. I was interviewing Mayor Bramson here in New Rochelle, who runs a city about the same size, and he actually has come out already and endorsed Buttigieg, which is I found very interesting. I was going to say something to you to annoy you, and I forgot what it was because I have a tiny brain. Vince is our guest. We're talking about the comparisons of Watergate. Something you said, I remember, since we're going back to that time. And you remember, I was always a moderate, even back in the 60s, when some people let their hair grow very long and were protesting at school. I wouldn't know any of them. But Joan Baez got her slippers in a ringer. Something she said was a total lie about the Vietnam War or something like that. So someone finally confronted her and they said, "Hey, why did you do that?" "Well, it's important that we win. It's important that the left get this done." And it's the same dynamic then, and then we're seeing it now. All either side wants to do is win. But I wanted to run something by you. Now, this is if I were king, if I were a monarch. Do you know what I'd do? Like they used to have the gladiators. I want to get AOC and Jim Jordan in a room. No, not in a room, in an arena. Give them all miserable, horrible weapons and say no one gets out till one of you is dead. Both of them.
Well,
Although
what I would do is I wanted to get them all in a room, and I would want to tell them, "Hey, why don't you start acting like adults and patriots?"
You know what? Jordan's a little bit more. Jordan is more mature. Jordan is more. Not what I mean by mature is he's more cynical about it. AOC's like a lot of people in the '60s. She's so sure she's right until she'll find out that she's not. You know what I mean? And of course, I don't mean I want either of them hurt. But that's where we are with this good, bad, and the ugly stuff.
Well, you see her saying things that are just ignorant. She said with the Amazon deal, it was going to go to Queens and create all these jobs. She says, well, they were going to get tax breaks of $3 billion. Why don't we take that $3 billion and use it for, I don't know, whatever, purpose. And you want to say to her, by the way, that $3 billion doesn't exist. It's not that New York State was going to write a check to Amazon, but she doesn't understand the process.
It has always been thus.
And the other, you listen
60s as well.
You listen to this Kamala Harris, and she said, when I'm the president, any law in that a state passes will have to be reviewed by my Justice Department, and if we think it's not constitutional, it won't go into effect. No, Kamala, that is not how the process works.
No, and you don't get to decide what's not constitutional.
You don't get to decide that. The Supreme Court gets to decide that when somebody. But these are the kinds of people that you've got these days, and you don't have people who are thoughtful. You don't have people who are just trying to do the best for the country. I mean, their intentions may be good. I don't think that they're evil people, but so I don't think we're seeing the best and the brightest come out and
no, I don't think
run
so.
for these offices. The other thing is too that money's such a big influence on all these races, and people also don't want to be put under this incredible microscope.
Sure.
People don't want to be in a position where, back in 1968 when you watched Blazing Saddles,
Yeah, I don't
you
wanna-
laughed when
I
someone
know.
used the N-word
I know.
in the movie.
I know.
That's
I'm
the
thinking
kind
back
of hyper scrutiny.
to my life in the 70s and 80s. They'd roast me on a spit. they would season me. Are you kidding?
Well, you know what? You would think so. So here's where the dichotomy is. During the campaign, there were instances where, like especially when with the Billy Bush tape, that people said Trump's finished. Tomorrow morning he's going to have to pull out of the race because people will never put up with that. And lo and behold, each day as these things unfolded, it was acceptable. It was acceptable to say, I can assault women whenever I want. It was acceptable to, use racial terms, or it was acceptable to speak about, white nationalism and things like that. And we've gotten to a situation where these political candidates now are immune to things that in the past
Oh, it
would have
doesn't yet.
doomed
Well,
them
that was
in
my
an
point. We're newer to all of it. It is 7:34. You have another minute. Would you be watching the hearings today? Or you'll be
Sure.
staggering around the house in your walker?
No, I'll be watching them. It'll be interesting to see how they unfold and how the each side handles it. The thing that annoys me about all of these kinds of hearings is they don't just get the witness there and start asking them questions. They grandstand for
Please.
95% of their time and then ask them one question, and then that's the end of it.
Well, the
So,
worst was what they did to Clarence Thomas 25 years ago. I'm never going to get over that. They treated, he's a horrible justice. He's for a guy at that level, it's all relative. He's an ignoramus, but he did not deserve to be treated the way he was treated.
No, neither did Robert Bork.
Robert Bork, we can talk about that. Although he was, he got even at the Saturday Night Massacre. He drank the Kool-Aid, though. Someone had to fire Elliot Richardson. Vince, thank you very, very much. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Okay, Bob. Have a good day.
Go Canadians. All right, coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to talk with Professor Jeannie Zaino. Guess who's in the house, Chris, and you haven't met him yet. He's the man that wants Jacob deGrom to get another Cy Young with 12 wins. Whatever happened to winning? Get on that mic. Get in there, Jake. It was in the paper today. They think he's going to win again. I'm upset. Doesn't anybody care that I'm upset? You don't care that?
Just months ago.
Okay, just put the headphones on. Jake Schaefer, he's your picks of the week guy. He is our analyst when it comes to these kinds of sports issues, and he thinks that Jacob deGrom should win the Cy Young. Jake, meet Chris. Chris, meet Jake. I'm introducing people.
How you
all
doing?
along
Nice
as
to
we,
meet you.
We add to the cast of weird characters here. All righty, I got the facts right here. I got the files. I got the source documents. Oh, where is it? I don't know. What the hell did I do with it? Anyway, why should it's in the Post? Why should he win the Cy Young?
For all the
Why-
reason I've
why
been
not-
telling you and telling
Why
you
not
and telling you.
Strasburger?
Better analytical numbers. Best pitcher in the game. Ask any batter who they least would want to face. in the
Chris, you're a
National
Met
League.
fan, aren't you?
No, I'm a Yankee fan.
Okay, you're a Yankee fan.
Yes.
Okay, but you do follow the Mets. I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
What do you think of DeGrom? Do you agree with him?
I agree with Jake.
Oh Jesus, God, no, Jake. But make your case. People are they're gonna find out today, and they've got 12 wins. But don't you have to win? Shouldn't you have to win?
It's pretty simple. Who is the best pitcher? You put a gun to your head. You got a pitcher to pitch
I like
for your
that
life.
analogy, by the
Who are
way.
you gonna
Oh,
pick?
can we do that with you?
No, you cannot.
It's just a metaphor?
6 years,
Okay.
it's just a metaphor. Damn it.
It's simple.
Yeah, it's simple. Now, what kind of analytics? You explain these analytics to me.
WHIP, ERA, strikeouts per inning,
What's WHIP mean?
walk hits per inning, innings pitched.
Okay. I don't know. I'd like to get a couple of calls on this before we go to Professor Zano. I really would like to get a couple of calls on this. Where is the professor? She may be working Fox today, but she would always let me know. I'm checking all my sources here.
So, what'd you think about the Astros? Have you talked about the cheating
We
gate?
did. But the best part of that is, A, do you believe it? And what he's talking about, folks, just to reset, all across the news
And is it
today
cheating?
is, well, yes, but so what? But let's get to the heart of this. It came out yesterday that they do believe that the Houston Astros were cheating and stealing signs, using cameras, et cetera, during the 2017 World Series. But there's a story within the story. Carlos Beltran was on that team, and now he manages the Mets, and he's pulling the Sergeant Schultz deal. I know nothing.
Well, it's the report is not only limited to the Astros. The Astros only had one of their ex-players go on record and actually tell exactly what the scheme was.
He shouldn't do that. When you're engaged within a team sport, you know what? I don't think it's cheating. It's cheating, but I think it's kind of like on the fringes. If you could figure out another team signs, good for you.
Well, did you hear
what-
exactly what they did?
Tell me.
They had a monitor with a feed from center field set up on the dugout steps. And so the Astros players would alert hitters that were at bat of an off-speed pitch by banging on a dugout trash can. So just one bang, off-speed pitch.
Wow. So it's just off speed versus.
That's
fastball.
what that, yeah.
Well, most hitters, as you know, prefer a fastball. There are very few people that actually love to try and hit a curveball.
Well, if I hear the bang of the trash can, I know to look for something off-speed. That's quite an advantage. Also pretty heady.
When I've been down on my luck, the bang of the trash can tells me that it's dinner time. It is, by the way, 7:39. You're listening to Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. We are live at the train station here with Jake and with Chris. It is 21 degrees. It's cold, but it's not the Armageddon. Now, I see you have some notes there. What's on your mind? Are you getting ready for your picks already? Mike, friend, you want to do? Oh, wait, we need music for that, folks. He'll do more later, but he's ready for his Mike Francesa fact of the day. Hold on. Each and every day.
Until he's gone.
Hold on. Jake Schaefer is doing a fact of the day, and he's doing this on Mike Francesa. As you know, Mike Francesa, radio icon, is retiring from terrestrial and joining the rest of the world that's now going digital. But in his case, we're not sure just why. But at any rate, Jake's Francesa fact of the day. Go ahead, Jake.
In 1991, ESPN tried to lure Mike away from WFAM.
Would they use a sandwich?
Tried to lure Mike away from WFAM to become a studio expert on college football, college basketball, and the NFL in 1991.
What's the matter? Not enough bologna on the bread? What? All righty. Where did Jeannie Zano go? She's very, very responsible. She always calls when she can't make it. or she always texts, or she emails. But she could be at Fox now, and she probably, I don't know, is not on News 12. All righty, so have you started looking at your picks of the weekend? Now, Chris, you guys should, he likes football too. He runs a pool too. Too bad you guys didn't know each other. But you still have your football pool?
Yes, and I was eliminated from it on Sunday. Very sad.
You were
Very
eliminated?
unfortunate. Thank you to the New Orleans Saints for losing to the 1-7 Falcons.
Oh, you did an eliminator pool?
Yes.
Oh.
Look at these football.
And I was eliminated.
You were eliminated. Oh, you've been eliminated, all right. So what Jake does, and we have a sponsor for it, and Jake, a little inside baseball there, but Jake's picks of the week, and what are you now, 10-6?
And one push.
Oh, one push. That's right. Are you looking at any games? Has the Jake machine, the processor up there, that chip?
The Jets-Redskins game should be interesting. Two terrible teams.
The Jets.
I think the spread right now is 1.5. I think the Jets are favored on the road by 1.5.
Now you said this over the toilet bowl, and you got your butt kicked.
Disgraceful.
The disgrace bowl. Did you have a horse in that game, Chris? Who did you like?
No, I mean, I'm a Jet fan, so I thought they'd lose. So I was pleasantly surprised that they won. But as for predicting an outcome in that game, no way.
Well, now, you guys know football. I don't. How could you be as good as Mr. Barkley is alleged to be and only 1 yard? I could do 1 yard, and I'm a little dumpy Italian. I think he's hurt, too.
He better be.
Because that's
He
ridiculous.
really hung his quarterback out to dry.
He didn't block very well.
Oh, he got him killed.
You know what? They get millions of dollars. Let him get beat up a little bit. 10 years from now, he'll forget his own name.
Exactly.
Hey, that's what they want to do. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. This is Radio Westchester. We are live at the New Rochelle train station. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. And, oh, there she is. Darn it. One of my callers is here. Let us see. We'll be right back. That caller should try again. Some of the stories we're following for you on this Wednesday morning. Boy, I need another coffee, but we'll do that in a little while. Hudson Valley Braves record cold temperatures. It is 21 degrees, and we're going to take that call now. So you stay right there. Let's see who's on the telephone. But that's one of the stories we're following, the cold weather. But we're going to take a call right now. So let's see what's going on. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
I will call to weigh in on the DeGrom issue.
Yes,
besides the fact it's not cold, we used to walk in the snow 5 miles to school, uphill and back both ways. So,
yeah. You go ahead. What do you think about the DeGrom issue? Does anyone agree with me?
First of all, I'm a Mets fan. Okay.
Yeah.
I think he definitely deserved it last year, but I don't believe he deserves it this year for one reason. While he is one of the top 3 pitchers I would want on the mound in a Game 7 take all. He hasn't proven himself in the big game yet.
All right, that's a fair thing. But who would you give it to? I think Strasburg. You win almost 20 games.
Well, like I said, the top 3. So, yes, Strasburg definitely. I think I would give it to him this year. I'm taking nothing away from DeGrom. Like I said, one of the top 3 on the hill, Game 7. But he has yet to prove in the playoffs that he is the man.
Yes. Okay. Well, see, now that I'm glad to hear that. Someone finally agrees with me. But no, you're the only one. I needed you to agree with me. I needed that, Anthony. You needed that very much.
Listen, you need everybody you can to agree with you because the deck is definitely stacked against you.
Goodbye.
And up against you too.
This is ridiculous. I'm 0 for like 5 today. Everybody hates me. But you love me deep down. I know you do. Thank you very much, Anthony. We got one person that agreed with me on Jacob deGrom. And again, we're looking at some stories. We did miss our call with, I'm looking to see what I might have missed. So don't know why we missed it, but that's okay. We have so much radio to do. Ongoing calls and chats. Who are you? Oh, that was, we heard from, I'm looking at these calls here. Chris, see when you get rolling in this, you'll be figuring this out for me, and I won't be doing it myself. But I'm trying to figure out, let's see, this is when we find out. See, we don't have caller ID. We have caller ID for the numbers, but not the names. So we could see if that was our guest, and I'm going to do that. Right now, it is, though, still 21 degrees. The big story of the day is the weather. Overrated, I think. Chris, do you think we overrate the weather? Do you think we do too much? I know I was taught when I was learning radio that weather trumps everything, but
it does,
it's
but
nice
this is
out.
too much. I mean,
It's
20
nice
It's
out.
20 degrees. Yes, it's cold, but you put on a coat and a hat, and you're fine.
Yeah, that's my take too. No, I'm looking at the. Yeah, well, I missed that. What we're going to have to do is reopen the phones and talk about some other stuff because we've got the AJ Woodson coming up at 8:20. Zeno did not make it today. She might make 8:50. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, today is a very important day in history. Even though we have the pro and con people regarding impeachment, nonetheless, we have a president accused of doing something that many believe is a high crime and misdemeanor. Others do not. But I think the most important thing to remember about this is that, and I keep emphasizing this because it'll make it a lot easier for people who don't follow this stuff. And it's not that I'm any smarter, it's just that it's part of my job to follow this stuff. There is no set of rules for this. There is no kind of crime that the Constitution or the existing laws on the books that require the removal of a president. There just is not. What the founding fathers did is they created a situation, and they wanted it to be more political than not, where basically you can't prosecute a president who's in office. You can't lock him up. You have to wait till he's out of office, and I think that's become accepted now. It's a little vague, but mostly settled law, or at least settled practice. But what they did say is it is up to the Congress, meaning the joint Congress, the representatives, the House of Representatives, they get to bring charges, and it's almost always going to be the opposition party, let's face it, but to bring charges, to investigate, then to draw up articles, then to have a trial. But where there is an opening, and it's actually interesting for people who love the law, for people who love process, for people who love Robert's Rules of Procedure during even a meeting, this is one of those few times in our republic where there is no set of rules and they don't want it. They want the Senate, whether it's these men and women now in the Senate who will be Republicans because they dominate the party there, they will have to decide if what the president is accused to have done, whether that meets the standard. And there is no standard. They will be setting it. It's really interesting. And it is an extremely high bar deliberately. It was the whole impeachment process was put in there to make sure that a president doesn't go too far, but it was in there so that it would have to overcome enormous inertia, political inertia, public outcry inertia because of the reverence we have for elections. So my point is this. There are Democrats and even some Republicans who are concerned about this president. They may establish beyond a reasonable doubt, and frankly, I think they already have, but that's just my observation. They may actually establish beyond a reasonable doubt that that there was quid pro quo. Or even to use the word, and I think he went too far, and I heard it last night on, I guess it was C-SPAN, when the head of the Intelligence Committee called it bribery, and I guess it was NPR or C-SPAN, the person said, well, why are you calling it bribery? He said, well, it's valuable. Anything that has value that you exchange for something else in an illegal way could be considered bribery, blah, 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 whatever it is. They can establish that beyond a reasonable doubt. Still doesn't mean it rises to the level of impeachable or taking a man from office. So you keep that in the back of your mind as you go through all of this. You may wind up, and this is something from a political point of view the Republicans are concerned about, we may wind up with something where we all agree the president did something we don't like. We may even think that he broke a law. We may even think he broke a serious law. But whether it rises to that level is 100% supposed to be almost subjective. And we have to live with that. And that's because if any group of people, it could be a court, it could be the Democrats in this committee, it could be a Republican, it could be the people in the State Department, it could be the Attorney General, if they find something so egregious that the president did, the whole, and this is where I get concerned, the whole republic is dependent on the ability of people to forget party for that moment in time. So we shall see. Anyway, that's what's going on today. We are opening up the telephones once again. 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. And we certainly have a lot to talk about. We think that you will too. Now, I want to go back to some of the local stories which we didn't catch up with. We have a very busy 8 o'clock hour, so we'll get to some of them now. The board postpones a vote. That is the board, the Metro North Board postponed a vote on adding parking fees amid criticism from Assemblywoman Amy Paul. And we did the story the other day. Metro North Committee members shelved discussion of a plan to increase parking fees at commuter rail stations amid criticism. Assemblywoman Amy Paulin said she and others met with Metro North less than a week ago, and the proposal never came up. But what they wanted to do was increase parking fees at Metro North train stations by $42.75. With North White Plains commuters hit the hardest. They would pay an extra $114 per year. Now, it may not seem like a lot, folks, but when you add it to everything else, when you add it to the cost of the train, when you add it to you can't go out to dinner without having to put your car at a meter. You go through a red light by half an inch and it catches you. Something's just gone terribly wrong. So they did postpone that, although a story within a story here is Amy Paulin. Is she perhaps framing and getting involved now? Do you think she will run for the congressional seat that is being vacated by our congresswoman here? We will soon find out. That, of course, Nita Lowy. Now, Mount Vernon, this may not seem like a big story, but as a neighborhood story, it is a story. You know, all of us remember growing up. I know where I grew up, we had this famous pizzeria. We had Felix's, and we'd always go there. And there was another one on Prospect Avenue in Brooklyn. They were like the cornerstones of life. Well, Mount Vernon had such a pizzeria, and they had a fire, and then the owner died. Well, Johnny's Pizzeria is back. The Piscopo family says they're recovering from the loss of the pizzeria matriarch by sticking together and putting their love back into a place they call home. It has been in Mount Vernon for 75 years, and the family says it is not going anywhere. The shop still has 3 rules: no slices, no credit cards, no Wi-Fi. You got to eat the whole pizza. I have no problem doing it. Can you eat a whole pie, Chris?
I want to say no, but
can.
Let's be honest.
Oh, I can. Oh, I could eat a whole pie in a minute. The only reason I'm not the size of this parking lot out here is that I know I don't want to die young. But I could eat. No question about it. Vince and I, the guy, we used to routinely have a pie and share it.
Yeah.
And that's nothing. 4 slices.
Oh, yeah.
Drop in the bucket. Yeah. You kidding me? Do you have a favorite pizzeria here around?
It might be Johnny's.
Is it Johnny's? The one in see, mine is the one. It used to be Modern. But when they were over on down by North, all the way down by Home Depot, and it still is up there. But for going in for a slice, the one Sal's in Mamaroneck.
Oh yeah, that's great as well.
That's good stuff. Now, do you believe? And in fact, I'm going to open up the phones for this too. How do you feel about the notion of salad pizza? You should be offended.
Get a salad.
It's not pizza.
Right.
Jake?
Yes.
Salad pizza.
Never tried it.
Good. See, Jake understands me. The salad pizza is just, it is infamia, I think, that it should be called. Why do they even buy it? Why do people kid themselves? Why go into a pizzeria and get salad pizza?
I don't know. People think it's a healthy option, but I mean, it's still pizza.
No, it's not pizza. No. Life is about rhetoric and words. It is not pizza. It is flat, unleavened bread with green stuff on it. It is not pizza.
I guess that's a different way to put it. Yeah.
All right, here, what are we going to do? I think I may even give you a story to read. See how your old chops are. What story do I want to give them to read, folks? Of course, we're rip and reading. They're not rewritten. You have to rip and read. So can you still rip and read? Can you still do that?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out. What do I want to... Yeah. All right. This is News 12 gave us the story. Here, try this one out. Folks, we're doing this right here on the air. His first news read in 5 years. Read that story. Go ahead.
It's cold.
Wow. Did you hear that, Jake? Go ahead.
Yes, here in the Hudson Valley, temperatures may get to record lows. Yeah.
This is what it's become.
I gotta need my bullpen. I need my warm-ups.
Bullpen warm up. Come on, go.
The News 12 say it will be sunny. Temperatures, though, will struggle to reach even freezing temperatures today. 10 to 25 miles per hour wind. The previous low was... Ooh. Weather sound effects. I like it. The previous low was 23 degrees. We'll get over that, but it'll still be cold. If you have health issues, maybe you should wear extra layers, bundle up, and whatnot.
Do you hear my teeth chattering?
Yeah. That's what it sounds like when you're walking outside.
Good. It's cold.
It is very cold, but it will warm up later in the week. This is not a cold front. It's just a temporary situation. It'll get to closer to 50 degrees by the end of the week, toward the weekend.
All right. And not bad for his first shot out of the box. Totally cruel to do to him. I came in for this. I'm supposed to be observing today. He's giving me news to read. All righty. What is this? Files in Arkansas. Michael Bloomberg. This is something we did want to talk about a little bit. Michael Bloomberg, he did file in Arkansas. He's not been met with I thought he would be met with more open arms because Lord knows he's a true centrist, a social liberal, a economic conservative, lets the cops do what the cops have to do, did a good job, almost a perfect mix. Mike Bloomberg took another step Tuesday toward entering the race for the presidency. See, I can't talk either. See, it's catchy, Chris. Personally traveling to Arkansas to file paperwork to appear in the state's primary ballot. The move comes just days after Bloomberg's aides filed paperwork for the billionaire businessman to be on the ballot in Alabama, another state with early registration deadlines. Despite the latest ballot filing, the former three-term New York mayor stopped short of confirming. So he's not saying he's going to run. It's almost like he's putting his toe in the water. Now, I went out on a limb, by the way. I don't know if you know about this a month ago.
Yeah.
Before he announced, I actually, when I was looking at the race, I don't want Elizabeth Warren. I don't want Bernie. I want them to stuff Joe Biden and have that. He's sensible and decent and all of that. And that's still my view of him. And but man, I don't know who's going to be his vice president. I just don't know if he's got it anymore. He doesn't seem to have his fastball anymore. Michael Bloomberg seems to me to be the perfect candidate, and he's brilliant. He's a smart guy.
I wonder what the repercussions would
Say
be.
on that, Mike.
I wonder what the repercussions would be to the primary process if Michael Bloomberg can come in, parachute in, after all these debates and all this stuff has happened, and get the nomination.
It's not unprecedented. Bobby Kennedy was about to do that very thing when he got shot. He waited for McCarthy to soften things up. McCarthy was the equivalent of, let's say, an Elizabeth Warren, at least back in those days. Yeah. And then finally he ran. Wasn't quite as far to the, maybe more to the left than McGovern, but that's what Bobby Kennedy did. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. How do you feel about Mr. Bloomberg? You have an opinion there?
No, I really don't. I'd have to read more about what his positions are. So far, I've only heard that
missionary.
He won. Well, thanks. See, that's what I missed.
Oh, no.
Comments like that.
I'm sorry. You mean his political positions?
Yes. I would like to see them fleshed out more in the national debate and the national stage.
See, my concern is down south. Would they vote for a man who's Jewish? It's so unfortunate. I still can't believe, one of the shows we're working on.
And also a New Yorker. That does not play well.
But they vote. They love Trump because he's acerbic. I mean, the South loves Trump. He's their man.
Oh, that's true. Did you see at the football game over the weekend in Alabama? He got cheered.
He got cheered?
He got cheered loudly.
In Alabama?
Yeah, not like what happened in the World Series in Washington, D.C., where he got booed when they showed him.
Down south, they cheered him.
Yeah.
Are there any libraries down south? No, I was just wondering. I know you got some great schools, but I don't know. All right. What do you want from me? It's 8 o'clock. We're going to go into the 8 o'clock hour now. Let's see who's coming up on the 8 o'clock hour. A.J. Woodson, Ivar Hayden, Harlan Ullman. You won't want to miss that. He figures to be amped today. We'll come back. We will share the news with you, a fuller news report. But first, we are going to take a break and see if we can get some more coffee in here. This is Radio Westchester. It's 20 degrees. It is cold, but nothing like they were making it out to be. The 8 o'clock hour is supported by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management and their offshoot Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena and Khan, Dominic Cigars of Larchmont, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. You can come here and get that experience, or we will take it out to you. Good morning. It is 8:02, 20 degrees, very sunny, getting up to maybe 34 today. It is Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. Welcome to the 8 o'clock hour of Mornings with Bob Marrone on Radio Westchester. I am Bob Marrone. We are the station at the New Rochelle train station. You can listen live on radiowestchester.com. You can even tell Alexa, or whatever her name is, to put us on, and she will turn me on. Yes, she's hot. Or you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope. We know that many of you already do. Really, the top story today is the weather. You better bundle up when you head out the door today, as record temperatures will make for dangerous conditions. Again, we feel that they're overrating that a little bit. It's 12 degrees, getting up to 24 tonight, but then we do expect things, thank you very much, we do expect things to improve tomorrow. It's not quite as bad as they say, but if you are infirm, if you have trouble with the cold, do not go outside. It is prematurely winter, but not an extraordinary problem as we have been made to feel. This story out of Connecticut, there's always another toll. In what would have been one of the nation's shortest toll roads, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont wants to erect a cashless toll gantry on northbound Interstate 684 in Greenwich, where the highway slices through the western corner of Connecticut for a short 1.4 miles before returning to North Castle. It's part of that state's $300 million toll plan that Lamont, a Greenwich Democrat, unveiled last week to help finance his $21 billion transportation infrastructure plan. The Greenwich tolls would help finance the $13 million rehabilitation of the northbound causeway over the Byram River. And again, the sign we're looking at, and we thank Lohud for that story, is the sign that says entering Greenwich. It's going to cost you. Well, the people who live there can afford it. The people driving through, well, probably cannot for a mile and a half. This story out of Rye. After 2 years engaging city council in the city of Rye and during a period of contraction in the luxury real estate market, Versames and its namesake development company are approaching the start of construction in the heart of downtown Rye. High-end luxury condos, says this story in Lohud, at 46 Locust Avenue and 6 adjacent parcels. The development firm will erect 4 two-story buildings with 3-bedroom homes ranging from 2,200 square feet to 2,900 square feet. I'll take 2. They start at $2.5 million. That's where they begin. Wow, that's expensive. Luxury, high-end. That is not affordable housing. And a story out of Lohud today, actually News 12 and Lohud, talked about why survivors and advocates and accused ex-priests are having problems with the new church list of abusers. Some of the priests or former priests that are on that list are upset because they're not getting due process. They wind up on the list and they are considered guilty. It's costing them jobs, it's hurting their futures, and they want their chance in court. Others, people who would normally be on the prosecuting end of that, of the plaintiff end, are saying not everybody who should be on that list is on that list. You will recall here in New York State, if you or someone has a complaint that you've been abused in the past 40 years, you have until August next year to make your case. Otherwise, forever hold your peace. Yesterday, the Supreme Court began hearing arguments in a case challenging President Donald Trump's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, also known as DACA. This out of News 12 today. News 12 is taking a deeper look at how the decision is already impacting the lives of DACA recipients living in the Hudson Valley. And folks, 700,000 people have been granted protection through DACA. About 41,000 of them are right here in New York State. And what the issue is going to boil down to, now the rumors coming out, and again, they're just rumors, the Supreme Court keeps these things close to the vest. But it really is a technicality. Evidently, the manner in which President Obama executed that executive order, that is really what is at issue. He may have gone beyond his authority to do so, not necessarily that the Supreme Court justices do not like the idea of a DACA. But it could have incredible effects on the election coming up. It probably would hurt Republicans if it is pulled, and help Democrats when they get elected, or if they get elected. Okay, this out of Anderson, South Carolina. You remember Jesse Osborne. He pleaded guilty to killing his father, then firing on the Townville Elementary School playground there in 2016. He fatally wounded a 6-year-old boy. He also had plans to kill 50 others. Investigators are saying that Osborne shot his dad. Jeffrey Osborne then stole his truck and drove to the school 3 miles away. Now, because Osborne was 14 at the time of the shooting, state law requires a special hearing before he is sentenced. This according to the solicitor David Wagner, the lead prosecutor in the case. At this week's hearing, a judge will consider psychological evaluations of Osborne, his family life and home environment, and whether he can be rehabilitated. That last part, whether he can be rehabilitated, is huge. Now, he probably, and generally speaking, there's a lot of brain plasticity. Maybe he could be helped. I do not know, but he should be kept out of society. Hey, if he was here in New York, they probably have him out already. That's a knock for what they're doing down in New York City. Okay, let's cover some sports. The injuries to veterans Mike Zibanejad and Mark Stahl have thrust added responsibility upon the youth of the Rangers, and young they are. They've got 4 defensemen 21 years of age or younger. They have a number of forwards under the age of 23. That roster is younger than many teams 2 levels down in professional hockey, but nonetheless, they're very talented, if undisciplined. But last night, their youngest, Capo Caco, he's 18 years old, closing in on 19, scored 2 goals in a 3-2 victory over the powerful Pittsburgh Penguins. The other goal was scored by Adam Fox. He's 19 or 20. He is out of Long Island. So the Rangers are doing well, surprisingly well, given their inconsistencies. So we shall see how that goes. The other big story in sports, too, really, we've been talking about one of them all morning. They will be picking the Cy Young Award winner. Jake, our go-to sports handicapper, Jake Schaefer, is saying that he thinks Jacob deGrom should win again. And I do not. I think that winning still matters in sports. Otherwise, Tom Brady, if their team was 1-15, would still be the best quarterback in football. I'm just look at Jake's looking at me like, oh, wait till I get back on the mic. The other big story, and it's an interesting story that I'd like to spend a minute or two talking about it before we go to our next guest, is that it is being evidently revealed that the Houston Astros back in 2017, when they defeated our Yankees, were stealing signs. And they had a rather sophisticated process using cameras, but then they got to somebody in the dugout who would beat on the side of a garbage can twice, and you knew it was going to be an off-speed pitch. Well, 2 interesting twists. One, do you think that that is truly cheating, number one? And number two, we should wait to hear from the new Mets manager, because Carlos Beltran was on that team. He says he knows nothing about cheating. And you know what? He should say that. You can't be ratting out your teammates. You should try and steal signs. Lord knows. But maybe you shouldn't. How do you feel about that? We, back at my old radio station, he's passed away, we interviewed several times Ralph Branca. And grew up here in Mount Vernon, retired here in Mount Vernon. Very interesting guy and a very colorful, with colorful language, by the way. Some of the best parts of the interviews with him were off air. But he was troubled when he found out that they were stealing signs. And what troubled him more than anything wasn't so much that they did it, but that he used to go out on the road. You know, they had an interesting post-life baseball. Ralph Branca was very successful. Bobby Thompson was not. So they would go out and do talks together, and Branca would take him along, make him a few bucks. He said he never apologized, never talked about. But I'm not wondering, Chris, do you think he should have? Do you think, either it's okay or it's not? What's your take on this?
Now, you may know about this more than me, but didn't their relationship sour a little bit after that came out. 'Cause that came out late.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
like
my point. It did
around
sour. a bit.
2000, in the early 2000s that came out.
Yeah, it did, but only because it didn't sour because it came out. It soured because Thompson wouldn't engage him on the issue. And but they were just different people. And I was glad to have interviewed Branca because one of the things I think that happens in baseball is, and in all sports, is that we don't realize how too seriously we take it as fans. Like, Branca was supposed to go out and kill himself. The first baseman, I forget, on Boston, since passed away.
Yeah, Buckner.
Buckner, when he let the ball go between his legs. Now, the fans made that hard for him. But you know what? It's not as important. Ralph Branca was the last thing he was a victim or some sad sack.
Right.
He was a great guy. In fact, I'm going to say something that he said off the air, God rest his soul, because it was funny. And the way he said it. And anyone who grew up in Mount Vernon or New Rochelle or Yonkers or Brooklyn, as I did, will love this. I was asking him on the air first, was there anybody when he pitched who was the toughest guy to get out? And he said it was Stan Musial. But then I asked him again later, I said, really, Stan, were you afraid of him? Was there anybody that when you pitched, that you were afraid of? And you know what his answer was? And I have to phrase it properly so I don't curse. Get the bleep out of here. And what a wonderful guy. But now, speaking of cheating in baseball, I was a huge fan of the guys that scuffed the ball, that threw spitters, things like that. That used to be legal. Jake, we need you again. Could you come back? Remember, you handicap us. Without your advice when it comes to this sports stuff, I'm lost. You know that. Jake is doing all kinds of other things, finding sponsors, trying to figure out why I need mental help. But Jake, you enlightened us on the cheating scandal coming, well, if you want to even call it that, coming out of Houston.
It wasn't just the Astros are not the only team. They are the only player to come forward was an ex-Astro. So there are other teams involved in the scope.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned, and I actually took the bait, and I kind of agree with you. Aren't these kinds of things on the periphery sort of part of the game?
I would think so, but how far can you go? I mean, it's pretty. They went a pretty long way to cheat, but I think it was everyone knew that they were cheating. Even during the playoffs this year, everyone had a good feeling that the Astros were stealing signs.
They were probably using the same technique.
Knew what pitches were coming.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chris.
they've known that for a couple of years. I mean, I know the Yankees. They would put signs down as if there was a runner on second base, but there was no one on base. Because they had a feeling that something fishy was going on.
They did have well, I guess if they had their ballpark rigged in a way, I guess that would be a little too much. What I've always felt was okay is if you have someone in your dugout who's watching the signs and able to decode them. In fact, I have to be honest, being an old Wall Street guy, we used to be able to have our geeks, and we had these brilliant quants. They could write an algorithm for anything and figure it out. I'm surprised, and maybe someone has already done that.
Leo DeRocher used to sit in the outfield bleachers with tapping on his thigh, doing Morse code back to the dugout.
Do you sure he was tapping on his thigh?
You always gotta get in the mud.
No, I wasn't getting in the mud. I'm simply saying maybe, here's guys thinking he's giving signs and he's just having a grand old time out in the bleachers. I mean, I don't know.
At least he wasn't on the subway.
So where would you draw the line? Guys, tell me, where would you draw the line? Would you draw the line at electronic surveillance and something sophisticated you shouldn't do, but if you can steal the signs like some other way, like having a guy sitting in the outfield figuring it out, I don't think that's cheating. I think that you're just deciphering.
Well, what about a high definition camera?
That's cheating. But that's where I would write the law. What about you, Chris?
Boy, that it's a tough call as to determine where the line is. Because really,
it's where you say it is. That's the beautiful thing about the law.
What is the difference between a guy sitting in center field, given the signs, versus him holding a high-definition camera or a telescope, as was what was accused of the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1951.
Okay, here's the difference. If you can, the same reason why people don't like performance-enhancing drugs. If you can do it on natural and it's being done right there in broad daylight, more power to you. But if you need electronic surveillance to do it, I would say I would draw the line there. That's my take. Yours, Jake, our handicapper?
I don't know. It's tough. The Patriots got in trouble for bugging Super Bowl practice a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was cheating because those are supposed to be private practices.
Yeah, what's the difference between cheating and gamesmanship? I don't know. I'm not smart enough.
No, but you know what? But I think eventually you need it. For example, now in hockey, there's clutching and grabbing, but there's a ref should catch that. Okay. There is one player, Matthew Barnaby. He tells the story. He told it on the NHL channel one time. I was amazed. He used to, when we used wooden sticks, he used to carve down the heel of the stick to a point so that when we'd whack people in the calves, it would hurt a lot more. So, all that stuff goes on. And
Well, they say in the NFL, if you look close enough, every play there should be a flag thrown. If you look close enough.
Well, sure. Well, the sport, I don't know how refs call basketball. I have no idea. And they're certain. They're convicted when they do it. It is always an amazing thing to me. Basketball seems hard. Football seems hard, particularly the line. I mean, how many refs do they have in football? Like 10?
They have at least 5. And they take the human element. They're taking the human element out of baseball. They're going to have robots calling balls and strikes.
I kind of like that idea.
They have
but
terrible instant replay rules in the NFL now. They can challenge pass interference, and that's just takes up too much time.
Now, what about a pitcher who can get away with scuffing the ball and throw? You don't hear about spitballs anymore, and I wonder why we don't, because now you've got the split finger, and what's the pitch that Mariano threw?
Cutter.
The cutter. That they do the same thing that a spitball used to do. But you don't hear about that. I was all for that. I think a pitcher should be able to.
Oh, you were pro spitball.
Yeah, I was. I was only because you'd have to know my background and without boring people. I was a high school pitcher who mangled his arm very badly. In fact, I did it throwing a ball. I didn't know that my arm was already broken. And in the middle of throwing a ball, it broke fully.
Ooh.
Twisted, and I had with rehab. Took me years to rehab my arm just to be a mediocre thrower, but because of the way it healed, I had a natural curve, so which they taught me how to throw better. So, long story short, I didn't become any star. It wasn't this great story. Well, made it to the major leagues. I managed to get back on the high school team for one fall season, cut in the spring because I didn't throw hard, and some big guy, Mike Coleman, 6'4". Freshman threw but I could get righties out even because I didn't throw hard, but because I had really good stuff. But I when I was rehabbing, it's very boring. So my house was next to a factory, and so I hammered this wooden thing on the wall in the backyard, and then I put a funny shaped thing into that, so that I'd have to throw like 500 pitches a day just to learn how to throw again. So what I would do is I play this game where if it was a strike, but if it hit that thing I put in the middle and it bounced, a single, and I would play all these games with myself too. I really became like a wonk about pitchers, off-speed pitchers,
Right.
curveballs, strikes, and I got obsessed with pitching. And it was that when I fell in love with old pitchers. I have every book ever written by a pitcher, probably.
Really?
Yeah, and that's why I love to watch pitching duels. And when a guy climbs a ladder, if you know what that is, with his fastball, or after you get 2 strikes on somebody, and that should be my next guess, but you get 2 strikes on somebody, and then we're going to be right with you, caller. You get 2 strikes on somebody. Oh, come on, phone. There we go. Da-da-da-da-da. We will be right with you, caller. You get 2 strikes on somebody, you bounce it in the dirt, or you've been throwing a guy outside and high, with the little curveballs, and you go up and high and hard. Now, I didn't have high and hard.
Yeah.
I had to throw at lefties. There are balls still in orbit with the space station. But that's how I got into it. So I would cuff the ball. I would do anything.
That's fascinating that you're pro scuffing, pro spitting, pro whatever.
Whatever you can do to the baseball to make it move. Yeah.
Gaylord Perry is in the Hall of Fame.
His book,
Barry Bonds is not.
one of the great books about pitching, was by Me and the Spitter, by Gaylord Perry.
Really?
Very interesting stuff. Yeah, really good. Probably the best book by a pitcher, though, and I would encourage anyone to read it, is Satchel Paige.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh my God, he just an incredible guy, and even the life he led. He was very well paid. Even in the Negro leagues, he made a lot of money there, but he made a lot of money as well barnstorming, and off seasons going to Cuba, and it's funny in the weird America that we had then. He would get together with the Ty Cobbs and all these other great players, and they would go around the world and around the country having a mixed race team. He was great. Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson. These were great, great ball players. But that book, what he used to do to make money, he would go to a ballpark and he would call in the outfielders and say, I'm going to strike out the side now with no outfield, and do it. You got to read it. It's called Maybe I'll Pitch Forever, and his signature line was, "Don't look back. Something may be gaining on you." All righty. I have my Kansas City Monarch hat, by the way. Yeah, I love pitching. Don't get me started on pitching. I'll go off on it. You guys will just want to say, shut him up. All righty. We're going to go to the telephone where one of our favorite guests, as you know, one of our specialties here is not just honoring them by doing so, but by providing you with the best local news we can by having on all the great local bloggers and newspaper people. One such entity is Black Westchester Magazine. Please welcome the editor-in-chief, A.J. Woodson. Good morning, A.J.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Do you remember that, Chris? Good morning, good morning, good morning from A.J. You sound like you're underwater. Are you showering?
No.
I think we may have to call you back. I'm going to call you back on your, let me see.
Sound better now?
No.
Does it sound better?
No, you. Did you play baseball growing up?
Not to the level that you guys did. It was an interesting conversation. They say it's not cheating if you don't get caught. And everybody's always looking for an advantage, and then some people feel cheating is cheating no matter what.
Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to use a special line we have. Hang up, I'll call you right back. All right?
Okay, no doubt, no doubt. All right.
We're calling. Chris, say something.
We're calling.
Yeah, I'm going to call him back. Hold on. Let me do this.
Every once in a while, one of these technical issues pop up, and just roll with the punches, which Bob does best, getting punched and rolling with it. But we'll have our guest on momentarily.
Yeah, we do.
Assuming Bob knows how to work a telephone machine, which
You know,
he probably does, but we're going to find out for sure in a couple moments.
why are you not on? 914. Okay, I think I have it now.
All right, Bob has almost figured out the telephone, so we will have our guest back on from Black Westchester quite shortly.
I'm getting his voice, but no, he'll pick up. Da-da-da. There you are. I'm gonna patch you in now. We have you on a special line. We now have on a special line. Da-da-da-da-da. You should be much better now.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good
Yes.
morning. See the proof of technology. I feel like Fredo. I can do things. I'm smart. I'm not dumb like everybody says. I was passed over.
I don't know who said it, but I like that. It said Bob's good at getting punches and roll with the punches or whatever. That was cute.
Oh, that was you. You probably remember Chris Conway. He used to do traffic and weather with me back at WVOX back in the day.
Okay.
And
What's up, Chris?
How are you?
yeah, so did you look like you were an athlete? Did you play baseball, football, anything like that, AJ?
More football and basketball than baseball. I didn't play baseball as much as you did. But I listened to a lot of the conversation, and my only comments is some people say it's not cheating if you don't get caught. Some people feel cheating is cheating. I heard y'all saying one thing is cheating and one thing is not cheating. So.
Yeah. Try telling that to your wife. So I know what's wrong with me. Jeez, I could get my. Hey, listen. I bet you didn't know, but Chris, you may remember this. Let's have a little fun before we get into all the politics that we talk about. I have a very interesting sports secret that nobody knows about me. Now, you know that I played pretty decent hockey and still play to this day. that I was a baseball player, halfway decent pitcher with a mangled arm. But what part of Bob Marrone's sporting life, Chris, did you not know? Ding, 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 ding.
On golfing?
No, I coached Industrial League basketball. Look at you looking at me like I got eight heads. Yeah. See, I bet you didn't know that, AJ.
Well, I read Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's manuscript, and he said you taught him how to dunk.
No. No, that's just wrong on so many levels. I couldn't dunk with a ladder. No, what happened was my brother was a college ball player, pretty good basketball player. He was taller than I was, which isn't that. Go easy on me now, which wasn't hard. And I could bring up the ball. I was fast and a tough basketball player, but I couldn't shoot for the love of God. And so I try out for my high school team, and I don't make it. I get cut. But they needed, they didn't have enough practice players. You know how that is. They had 10 guys. So I became the manager and a practice player. But in that effort, I was, the school was Bishop Ford. We had all the Franciscans from St. Francis College and all of that. Very good coaching. And so while I was managing and keeping the book, later on I became an NCAA scorer, official scorer, and I coached in the Industrial League. And I'm going to share this with you and Jake and now AJ. There is in no sport does a coach mean as much as in basketball. You are like a sixth player. The game is running from your fingertips through your toes, and you're that wired into it. Now you played. Would you agree with that, AJ?
Yes.
No, but again, you get, I don't know why they don't all die of heart attacks. But I loved coaching basketball. It was first I was an assistant coach to a guy that later became a minister. Shows you he got away from me, and then I was a coach for 2 years in the downtown athletic league for the Merrill Lynch investors. So my dirty little secret. All right, let's get to politics. I want to have some fun with you. You heard and we spoke about it yesterday that we felt that now that the election is over, and we allowed the candidates to rightfully so beat up the guy that was there before. But Richard Thomas, we feel, still has a story to tell about what he did when he was in office, the things he got in trouble for, the things that he did do, the things that he's accused to have done. But most importantly, the effort still ongoing by the new mayor. I think the acting mayor was working on it, Andre Thomas. Now the newly elected mayor, Sean Patterson Howard, will have to deal with the financial irregularities that seem to have gone on in that city for some time, most particularly in the Urban Renewal Agency. What do you know about that yourself, AJ? And what do you think a person like the ex-mayor will have to say about it?
I think a lot of stuff still has to come out. I think there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. I don't think there's been a thorough audit done. I think we're gonna find out money went out the door in a whole lot of different areas, and all that's gonna be discovered eventually.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, my friend.
So I really, I don't know who did what. I know that a lot of money is missing.
A lot of money is missing, and what's interesting is, over the course of the last year, I FOIA'd documents, got my hands on documents, and I've seen some of them. And what spooks me about it is you'll see a number, and this is don't take me literally, folks. This is what we call apocryphal, or really I'm paraphrasing. You'll see like a $3 million loan to somebody, and they won't pay it back. And the way it works, and I understand in the Urban Renewal Agency, is that if you can't collect from the person you lent it, you got to make good for it. There are some astronomical numbers. I can't get my head around them yet, but I'm going to have an accountant look at them. This we can't let this go. We in the press need to press back, and whether it's Richard, Andre, Sean Patterson, Howard, they cannot be tempted to just write it off and move on. The people of Mount Vernon have a right to know what happened to this money.
I agree.
And so anyway, we're going to have him on, also see what he's going to do with the rest of his life. And I thought you'd find that interesting, and you may want to listen in. It'll make for some interesting reactions by you, who does a lot of the hard work. Folks, again, I remind you, Black Westchester Magazine, A.J. Woodson is the editor-in-chief, and they do, to their credit, most of the heavy lifting reporting in Mount Vernon.
The one question I'd like you to ask him, the rumor running around that his intention is to run for controller.
You almost made me choke on my coffee. And people who saw I tell you what, and I'm going to make a deal with you. If Richard Thomas runs for controller, I want you to find a restaurant that's got your favorite meal. I will buy you dinner. I will fet you, and Cos will bring us home because we'll be silly drunk. I will. No, I can't wait to ask him that question. Are you kidding me? That's the rumor?
That's and again, I say rumor.
Of course,
I have no fact base, but that's the word on the street, though.
For those
evidently from people that are close to, close to him,
his people, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Folks, for those of you listening for the first time or listening out of the region, the controller, his relationship with the controller, let's just say that Adam Schiff and President Trump have a better relationship than the two of those had. And
yeah, they didn't get along when they sat next to each other in the city council.
Get along.
Yeah.
He accused her of not paying the bills. She accused him of saying, well, of course I can't pay a bill if you don't give me the proper documentation. And all of the rest of us are scratching our heads. She wouldn't give him...
Maureen had a press conference about that as well, about 200 and something checks that sat on his desk, and he claimed he had to audit every check before he could sign them, and things weren't getting signed. They already had her signature, and they sat on his desk or in his desk for over 30 days, and he hadn't signed them. She had a big press conference about it and everything. So, I mean, there's two people that said that. I don't know if there's truth to it, but,
You all who get a chance to get a hearing. Now, the good thing, folks, about getting people on, and we can share this with you, AJ also has a radio show, People Before Politics, that he does on Sunday nights. The most important thing is to get people on the record with these things, because then you have something to compare it to, and which guys like AJ and I love to do. So we will get Richard on because one of the things that always bothers me, of course, Richard did what he did with the funds, and he's paying a price for it now. Many people thought it could have been less. Some people thought it should have been more. Some people thought that it was an unusual thing because usually they're a slap on the wrist kinds of. It depends on where you come from. But most importantly, if we take the worst that may have been his tenure as mayor, even a broken clock's right twice a day. And what we tend to do is write everything off. And I don't want to do that. Where I was, one of the things I supported Richard at, I supported Andre at, and I support Sean Partisan Howard at, is not letting what happened in Memorial Field, and let's go forward. No, you got to go forward, but somebody ripped that city off where some persons or bad processes resulted in that city losing millions of dollars, and it shouldn't be let go. And there are times, this is a feeling, where it does seem as if the whole democratic infrastructure does not want that looked into. And that is exactly the kind of thing that I love to look into.
Well, Memorial Field, everybody's hands is dirty. There's enough blame to go around. 3-4 administrations. I mean, basically, there was an article in 1995 when Mayor Mayor Davis won. He was a county legislator. He had won the election. Mm-hmm. This was a month after. This was December before he swore in, and they were talking about the decades of decay of Memorial Field and the bleachers on the visitor side having to be torn down and all of this stuff. And so I look at it like this. So it was the Memorial Field. If it was a patient, it was on life support.
Yeah, even then.
It was on life support when Davis inherited. He did nothing to cure the patient. The patient died on Clinton's watch, and nobody has been able to revive the patient since.
Yeah, and of course he's talking about Clinton Young. Clinton Young was an interesting man, and I don't have a problem saying this because it's just opinion. Clinton was a very nice fellow, a very decent guy. I honestly thought he was a little out of his depth. And it was the one time I would call City Hall and nobody would answer the phone. It was not a very well-run City Hall. But but such is the history. And then, of course, Mayor Davis won again. And that's why what you do is so important. We need to hold, and without being personal, a lot of these people we all like. It's difficult, but we've got to hold them accountable. It's what we have to do. So
Absolutely.
to that end, what else are you up to? What are you working on? And what have you to say about that pizzeria coming back, Johnny's Pizzeria? Was it really that good? Chris Conway started chewing on the microphone when I mentioned it.
Oh wow.
it's sad to see. Are they that good?
I mean, a lot of people like it. I mean, I can't. I'm not a diehard fan. So,
Oh, okay. Are you a pizza fan?
I'm a pizza fan.
Yeah,
but
you
I'm
and I
just
got
not,
Feet's Pizza once by City Hall after covering an event. Don't think I forgot that. You made it disappear like a magician.
But I'm not. I mean, it was a good spot. It'll probably be great for Mount Vernon for it to come back.
Well, that's good.
I'm doing a story. I just did a story. I'm working on a paper right now. There is a Mount Vernon resident. Her name is Lillian C. Jones. She turns 100 tomorrow.
God bless her. What does she eat? We want to get that. God, Willa Jones. My goodness. No kidding.
So I just did a story on her.
Tell me about it. Tell us about her. Tell us about her.
I don't know. I don't know if she's the oldest living resident. She's got to be. She's at least one of them. I don't know if there's anyone older than her living resident, but the information just came to me yesterday. So I just did the story yesterday. It's on blackwestchester.com. You can read her whole bio. She's been very civic minded and all kinds of services to the community. She's been involved in a whole lot of stuff. So it's a great woman. I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Now, did you talk with her? Is she still with it? I mean,
I didn't talk to her. I know they're having an event tomorrow at a new place called The Spot on Gramerton Avenue, 168 Gramerton, and her grandson owns The Spot. Daryl Jones, I think his name is Daryl Jones, and they sent me the information, and I just did a quick write up on her.
Good for you. Good for you, but good for her. You know, if you cover it, if you manage to get there tomorrow, I will be otherwise engaged with stuff here.
I will, not unfortunately, I won't be there. I'm going to the New York Association of Black Journalists gala in Harlem. So
no kidding.
I will not be there.
Where's that at?
I have to look at the tickets. I just know it's in Harlem.
Oh, well, no. Well, you should go to that and keep doing what you're doing. You enjoying it? You know, you came up from Atlanta. One of the things, folks, that you should know about AJ, he had been a journalist involved in music and was an impresario as well in that field. And then he decided to turn to hard journalism because he doesn't like eating.
No, actually, I didn't come up here for this. I just came up here to take care of my mom.
God bless you. Good.
She had stage 4 cancer. She passed in
I'm sorry.
July 2014. And while I was taking care of her, Damon, who I knew, we had some music-based company in the 90s. He had me come videotape a press conference he was doing because the News 12 and them never showed the entire press conference. So he started recording his press conferences, putting them on YouTube and showing the whole press conference. And he had one press conference, and I wrote something about it, and that was basically one of the first stories. And he gave me the idea, and I designed the website on my mother's bedside. She actually got to see it a month or so before she died, and I just, I was never really involved in politics. Honestly, my whole involvement in politics is I voted for Clinton twice and I voted for Obama twice. Before this, I was not involved in politics at all.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Well, you certainly caught up quickly. My guest again is A.J. Woodson. He's the editor-in-chief of Black Westchester magazine. I want to go back a step. How important is it? You know, your city is, I guess, 80% African-American, 80% black. As a black journalist, of course, as a journalist, objectivity and trying to get the story out there, but also as a black journalist, your responsibilities might differ from that. You might have, as you say, to tell things from the black perspective. What is important in doing that? And when you go to that conference tomorrow, what does a black journalist have to worry about that the rest of us maybe don't?
Well, having a black newspaper, I have to double check all my facts. I have to document things more. I have to make my point. If the mainstream news say something, everybody believes it. I say something, I have to prove it. The burden of proof is more on me. I have to show the documentation. I have to prove it, twice as much as more people, just to get taken serious. And what's going to sound crazy, to get taken serious by black people.
Well, that's interesting. Say more about that.
I don't know. We tend to believe, back in the days, slavery and all that, everything, the whole thing, white is right, black is wrong. So black people wanted to be like white people because, that's what it was. We didn't have our own identity. We didn't, believe in ourselves. So, we tend to be harder on each other than they'll criticize me more, and I'm like, did you say that to News 12 or look? Well, no, they don't criticize what comes out of News 12 or the Journal News or Files or something.
But yet
as much as they
they'll come
criticize
after
us.
you. That's interesting. Well, one of the things that white folks, I'm really talking about myself here, and I think Spike Lee in some of his early movies showed this. For example, most white folks don't know, or at least I didn't. Again, I can only go by my own experience and the people that I know. We didn't realize that there was this divide even between light-skinned black folks at times and darker-skinned black folks. And one of Spike Lee's early movies, whether or not you leave your hair natural or whether you straighten it. And I never realized this, and as I think I told you once before, when I was on Wall Street, I didn't know that there were at times a rift between blacks from the Caribbean and American blacks, and even from the Caribbean. A good Jamaican friend of mine calls everybody she knows from Trinidad Tricky Trinnies. So you got the same, we have that in the Italian culture too. Go ahead.
We've always had division going back to the slave days when there were the field Negroes and the house Negroes. That's not the word they used back then.
Right, yes.
There was a big division. I just went to a church service Sunday, which was a day of unity, where they had the minister from Mosque Number 7, Muslim, the East Coast representative for Louis Farrakhan, preaching at a Christian church, a black Christian church.
Wow.
And it was about unity. And there's even a division there between black Christians and the Nation of Islam. There's always been some sort of division between us as a people. And some of it is systematic. I had just wrote about it. But some of it, we continue to find ways to separate ourselves, to, it's like in local politics, this election is like a tribal blood and crip mentality. Like anything is all wrong on that side, and they're the enemy, and it's just
isn't it incredible how human that is? Though here you're talking within the black community, as you said, quote unquote, the bloods and Crips. Look at the Democrats and the Republicans in the national scene. We treat people who ought to be our fellow citizens as the enemy. It's
the sad thing in Mount Vernon, we have the same thing, but it's black Democrats against black Democrats. It's not even the Democrats.
What is the
Republicans.
distinction, though? What is it? One of the things that we'll hear, someone will say that a person's not black enough, whatever that means, or whatever it means to that person, or as you say, you've got Democrats against Democrats. What would be the distinction besides, for argument's sake, Andre Wallace versus Sean Patterson Howard?
And that's what it is, the candidates and their supporters. But the whole not black enough, I mean, that's something we deal with too. Black Westchester is too black for some people. We're too radical, and not black enough for those go back to Africa separationist black folks. So we just gotta be who we are, represent what we represent, and I do things as I see it. I can't be the one thing I realize is I can't. For instance, me and Damon have two different ways of approaching things. I cannot be Damon, but nobody can be a better AJ than me. So I do what I do, and I play my part, and I stay in my lane, and I just try to elevate and go from there.
You know, one of the things that comes out listening to you, and again, my guest is the editor in chief of Black Westchester magazine, AJ Woodson. It's got to bother you. I mean, just as an observer from a distance here, it bothers me that, you know, because most people would look in a city that was all Italian or all black or all Asian as, well, they must vote as a block. They must all be the same. And here you are dealing with the same divisions in a black community. It's got to hurt a little bit when you're trying to bring people together, but also telling the news straight.
Yeah, you're never going to please everybody. Case in point, when Mayor Davis was in office, Rich Thomas was one of the biggest supporters and believers in Black Westchester because we were holding Ernie Davis' feet to the fire.
I remember that.
But once he got in office, I don't know why he really didn't realize that the game didn't change just because the player changed. Like, I had to hold his feet to the fire. So then, while Ernie Davis people did not despise me when he was in office, they ended up liking me when I was holding Richard Thomas' feet to the fire, and all his people despised me. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, some people, you know, they no one wants to be the person that is written about. No one wants to be the person scrutinized. And you're exposing things and telling things that they don't want known. And, you know, when you have somebody like Mayor Davis, he spent most of his terms without social media, and some of it without even local media like News 12 and Files. So, you know, you only had ABC, NBC, and CBS. They weren't here every day. And then, you know, we came along and, you know, with boots on the ground, we're there every day. And then you have social media on top of that. You know, it was a whole new world now he didn't have to deal with before. So,
well, AJ, I see some of the social media that comes out of your city, and I'm surprised at the enmity and some of the language and the anger that people have. But I guess it's the same anywhere. Now, just an interesting juxtaposition. If you were doing what you're doing now in a northeast city, how different would it be, if at all, if you were doing it, let's say, in a suburban city outside Atlanta, where you're from?
How different would it be?
Yes.
The landscape would be different, and the people would be different.
How are they different?
But I think once you expose people, there's a lot more racism down there, and it's blatant. It's in your face, blatant.
How does it manifest? How does it manifest?
You know that people don't like you. You know that they don't want nothing to do with you. And I actually respect that more than people that smile in my face and, you know, stab me in the back.
Yeah, like me, I smile at you and I hate your guts, but go ahead. Go ahead.
So you know, I respect it a little bit more. I think just anybody who is a truth teller, who speaks truth to power, we all would face the same stuff. I mean, we all would basically deal with a lot of the same stuff. The geography is different. The landscape is different. You know, the local language is different. But I think basically it's the same.
Yeah, people are people. Go back to something a little bit, because most of us will never experience that. The white folks won't. Although I did. I think I told you the story when I got a big promotion in 1971. Well, for a kid my age anyway. And I was doing correspondence, letter writing for the Southeast. And I worked for this guy from Atlanta, and I was like a novelty to him. As you say, I got an Italian from Brooklyn working for me. And, you know, I actually thought it was funny at the time. I didn't realize that I was kind of being diminished by that. So I've never really experienced what you have. What is it like when you're growing up and you know the person that you're talking to has contempt for you? Which is how I interpreted what you said. How do you adjust to that? And obviously you learn to deal with it, because you said even later on in life, you know that person doesn't like you, but you move on. How do you even come to terms with that?
You know, when I was younger, very young, I didn't realize it. I didn't know it till later on. I didn't see it. My parents moved us to Long Island, Suffolk County, Central Islip.
Oh yeah.
It was a black community, the American Estates. You know, it was a black community. You know, mostly African Americans, lower middle class, owned their houses. And I grew up from 7 to 14 there, I started realizing, I started having problems more so. Um, I don't know, I started coming into some knowledge that some of the things that were taught in school were not historically accurate. I'm not even sure. I think I was in actually fifth or sixth grade, and I saw some books in the back of the library in a box, and they were on black cowboys. And I can remember coming home telling my dad, "Yo, there were black cowboys," because I'd never seen any on
That's
TV.
true.
They
Well,
weren't on the shelves; they were in a book. There was a box like buried in the back of the library. I don't even know how I found them. And that started opening an awareness of making me want to find out more things and more things, and I started finding other things that weren't accurately true. And I think that was my first awareness of things. Because when you're younger, everything is just it's the way it is. You don't realize that it's going on.
I thoroughly understand. Well, let me run this one by you too. Again, my guest is A.J. Woodson. He's the editor-in-chief of Black Westchester magazine. We're talking about his emergence in this business and what it's like to do what he does, and what it's been like to be him growing up in America. Now again, I know I'm a lot older than you. Be nice to me, but in the '60s, there was Sidney Poitier, and it was a big deal. And forget what happened later in life, but there was a TV show called I Spy. And, oh, God, I got a mental block, but the great comedian who's now in jail, he was the co-star.
Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby, yeah, thanks. That's one of my age things. I don't remember it. But one of the funny things, and I didn't realize it, I must have been 30 years old, when someone said, "Do you know that great show with Andy Griffith and everything?" Here was a southern town, Mayberry, and there wasn't one black person in it, and didn't even give it any thought.
Right, and that was normal for TV at that
Yeah,
time.
it
I
really
didn't know
was.
any better.
No, none of us did. In fact, what was interesting there was a great comedy. If they still have reruns, there was a black guy who was on Hogan's Heroes, one of the captured soldiers.
Yes, yes.
And those were the only three that most of us would remember. Again, there were a few others, and some were kind of tokenish, but it was a very, very different world. And you're right, you just accept it when you're younger. You don't know any better. Now the world has changed, at least that way. So now when you take that into your work, what effect does it have now that you're an adult, you work for a living, you run a newspaper? You get it from all sides then.
Yeah, one of the things that really inspired Black Westchester, the portrayal of black men, black people, but specifically black men in the media. When there's certain crimes, the first thing you hear is that they're African American if they're black, but if they're not, you just hear it's a man. You don't hear his nationality. Some of the victims that have been killed by the police, the first thing they do is victimize the victim. Oh, he sold drugs at one time, or he had weed in his pocket, or he still was killed by the police. And then the portrayal in movies. You saw a white person who didn't grow up around black people. So you see some of the music videos. You see black people, criminals and gangsters and stuff of that nature. That's what you believe of black people because you have nothing to compare it to because you don't
Do you feel
see
that
a
way?
lot of black people.
Do
Huh?
you feel that way even as a black person when you watch the news when you were younger? Even as a black person, did you say, "Well, that's just the way it is"?
Well, I mean, some of us, it's a brainwashing. One of the things we just wanted to change the narrative. And I've seen you mentioned Spike Lee. Some of our black producers were able to start sharing the African American experience from another perspective that was never getting out there. He's definitely one. One of John Singleton was another one.
He passed away too young, John Singleton.
Right, and several others who have followed, and some that came before. So we have that responsibility of telling our story, for uplifting certain things, for doing the stories of our unsung heroes that you're not going to see about on News 12. You're not going to read about it in Low HUD. But these are people that have been holding it down for their communities for decades, and you don't get that. It's our responsibility to uplift them.
Well, it is. Well, listen, I want to thank you for all the time today. A.J. Woodson, you do a good job. Keep doing what you're doing. He's the editor-in-chief of Black Westchester Magazine. I'm looking at copies right here in our studio. You can go online. That's Black Westchester. It's .com, correct, if they want to go to the online version?
Yes, blackwestchester.com, yes.
Thanks a lot, my friend. It is always a pleasure, and to travel safe to the city tomorrow.
Thank you. And I see you have Delphin on now. He was very pleased to be on.
Delphin.
Facebook.
I'm committed to getting all the local journalists on here, and we're going to continue to do that, and you're going to be a big part of it. Thank you so very, very much.
All right.
Have
a great day.
A.J. Woodson, editor-in-chief, Black Westchester Magazine, and there he is. I was just about to call him. Somehow, I did not. I messed up here. There we go. I think I have Ivar Hayden on. Ivar. Nope. I got to call him. I was just about to call him anyway. Somehow, I didn't hear that come through. And that is my fault. I messed up with one of my favorite people. But let me see if I can get him.
Hello.
Hi, Ivar Hayden, Bob Marrone. My apologies. Did you try to get through and we didn't pick up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Repeatedly, starting a little before 8:50. Yeah.
Let me tell you what an idiot I am. Okay, I inadvertently lowered the volume. So, without further ado.
I hear you. I'm sorry, Bob.
No. You shouldn't be sorry. I called back to apologize to you. I was enraptured with this phone call I have, but also I have a thing here with an enunciator. But I had it down too low and I didn't hear it because when I'm wrapping up one interview, I go to the next. But it's my apologies.
No, don't be silly. Don't worry about it.
Well, what I'm going to do is say hello to you and tell you that we will move you to Friday. I can look right now. I have a very secret calendar right here. Folks, you're watching us produce live. You are now, but just this week, you own this spot at 8:50 now on Wednesdays. But tomorrow, Friday, can you do 8:20?
Yeah, I should be able to, yeah.
Okay, well, then let me know, and I'll give you a buzz off it. My apologies for that. I noticed
Not a problem,
it.
Bob.
I noticed it too late because I'm not that smart. You think it's easy being Fredo? I could do things. I'm not dumb like everybody says. We live in interesting times, and it's always good. Ivar
unfortunately, we do. Yeah.
Ivar
okay.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Problem.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
All righty, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with a man that you've been listening to for several years on this broadcast. His name is Harlan Ullman. He is an internationally renowned national security expert. His books have done very well: Anatomy of Failure, Why America Loses the Wars It Starts, A Handful of Bullets, Advisor to NATO, Advisor to the Atlantic Council, has been a swift boat commander, a destroyer commander. He also, as you know, is advisor to literally prime ministers, defense secretaries, defense ministers, parliaments, you name it. He's always traveling the globe, and sometimes he tells me, you can't tell people where I'm going. So I didn't, and I haven't. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Harlan Ullman right after this. righty, it is 9:03, and we enter the long-form phase of Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This segment is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. By Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Kahn. Dominic Cigars, located in Larchmont, right here in Larchmont, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. You can come here to our studios and experience that in the evenings, or we will bring that experience out to you. And he's with us each and every Wednesday, unless he's traveling somewhere on this planet of ours. As we mentioned earlier, he is one of the most respected, internationally known national security experts. He chairs a firm dedicated to that. He's been the chief advisor to the Atlantic Council. He teaches at military schools. He's been a swift boat commander and a destroyer captain. And he advises governments around the world and on a first-name basis with lots of generals. He probably has a lot to talk about today. His books, most recently, A Handful of Bullets, and more recently, Anatomy of Failure, How America Loses the Wars It Starts. Please welcome Harlan Ullman. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Bob.
I wish you did less things. It'd be easier to introduce you, but we always have, we get a lot more listenership these days, and we want people to know who you are.
Good.
Let's start with... we see this narrative. In fact, I was showing people before the headline in the Post. They were making the impeachment inquiry out. And I realize, of course, there's partisanship, making out to just be a hoax, which is unfortunate. But you travel in these circles. You understand these governments. You know the roles of the military and state departments, etc. How important is what these people are testifying to, and what is the real story with the Ukraine?
The problem here, my column today talks about 3 anniversaries, Bob, in November. The first, of course, is the end of World War I in 1918. The second was the falling of the Berlin Wall in 1989. And the third, with a question mark, is November 2016 and Donald Trump's election. The armistice that ended World War I produced World War II and the Cold War, and so the outcome was not very satisfactory. And all the expectations and hopes when the Berlin Wall came down have now been filled by an assertive Russia. And I argue that Trump's election and now the impeachment hearings could be, and I say could be, as damaging for the United States as the other 2 anniversaries were globally. And the reason I say that is that one of the things that Donald Trump has done, whether you love him or whether you hate him, is destroyed the 2-party system. The Democrats are lurching to the far, far, far left. There is no Republican Party, the party of fiscal conservatism and international engagement. It's now the Trump Party. And our constitutional system of checks and balances cannot work, in my judgment, unless you have 2 mainstream bodies that represent the more moderate center, which I would guess would be around 60 or 65% of America. So I think that is the overarching issue here. And no matter how the impeachment hearings come out, whether Trump is impeached, whether he's convicted, whether he's acquitted, I think the outcome is going to be dire because there will be a substantial number of Americans, probably 30 or 40%, who will be furious with any event, no matter what that event is. Now, regarding Ukraine, the issue is very, very straightforward. Did Donald Trump use American aid, military aid, that was approved by Congress and signed into law by him as a lever to force President Zelensky of Ukraine to come up with opposition research on Joe Biden and Biden's family? Now, the evidence, it seems to me, is overwhelming in that direction. We will see what the hearings uncover. But the Republicans are probably going to say, okay, Trump made an error of judgment. Is that worthy of impeachment? And is it really worthy of conviction? And I think you will see a number of Republican senators who, first of all, don't want to be in the minority. Secondly, are comfortable with the judges that Trump has appointed, comfortable with the economic tax cuts, regulation cutbacks, and so forth, and quite frankly see Trump as a lesser threat than the left wing of the Republican Party and Elizabeth Warren
you mean the
and
Democratic
Bernie Sanders.
Party.
And so that's going to be the issue. Did what Trump did is that worthy of impeachment and conviction? Now, in my mind, not only that, but obstruction of justice, the 10 scenarios that Bob Mueller laid out in Part B of his report, to me, provide more than enough evidence that impeachment and probably conviction is warranted. But at this stage, unless the House comes up with smoking howitzers, not smoking guns, my guess is that if they do vote articles of impeachment, the Senate will either choose not to accept them, which constitutionally they can, or vote acquittal. But we'll see what happens. The hearings are just starting, and how they are managed will have a great effect in terms of the outcome of this situation. But as I said originally, and rather pessimistically, no matter what the outcome is, 30 or 40% of the Americans are going to be outraged. And with social media, that could lead to all sorts of untoward events.
You know, pardon me, it's almost as if social media has given an augmentation to some wrong-headed ideas. One of the because here's the thing that bothers me, and it came even out of your very words. There are Republicans, and again, that's accepting that the president did something truly wrong, because I know there are those that say, "Oh, everybody else did it, and Biden was dirty," blah 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 blah. I get that. But they are willing to totally look the other way at our unique form of government, our Republican form of government with its checks and balances, look the other way because they don't like the far left. I don't like them either. But we've totally lost respect for the system that is America. Have we not?
Yes. And what's happened is that over the last 50 years or so, maybe more, certainly since Vietnam, the country has been deeply polarized and deeply suspicious of government and institutions. Probably the only institution that ranks high in America's perception is the military. Mm-hmm. But the priesthood, the media, Washington, D.C., the Boy Scouts, all of the public opinion about those institutions, Boeing, for example, or Wells Fargo, our great industrial and financial systems. So there is tremendous dislike and disrespect for the system. And when people hold the government in such contempt, and certainly Washington is held in that contempt, senators are likely to get a pass. There's nobody who's exercising the leadership to try to lead us out and to try to bring the nation together. I hate that phrase of bringing people together.
Yes.
And it may be impossible to do so when you have 30 or 40% of Americans who are Trumpites, and no matter what Trump does, they're going to support him.
Why?
And 30 or 40% who hate him, and no matter what he does, they will continue to hate him. And that polarization in a media age with all the instant communications is politically explosive. And without putting too fine a point on it, when you have more guns than people in this country, we did have one civil war, and I'm not predicting a second civil war, but I think that the situation is extremely volatile, and this could be sufficient to break the system. We'll see what happens.
You mentioned something that brings to light, and I'll try and articulate it as best I can. I don't have your gift, but it's something it's a stream that has run through my shows for 15 years. And to me, Donald Trump is the full-bore manifestation of this.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boeing. You mentioned the priesthood. You mentioned the Boy Scouts. You mentioned Wells Fargo. By the way, every time I do a Wells Fargo story, I play Death on Two Legs by Queen. I do. But you see, you're touching on something that has been happening in America for maybe 30 years, and that is winning, being dominant, us, like a sports thing. It has taken over American life. I often say on my programs that the worst thing you could be in corporate America is sincere. It's viewed as a weakness. You're a schmuck. Don't wear the white hat. If you're in a bank, don't wear the white hat. If you're on Wall Street, you're supposed to rip a guy's face off. If you have an answer to a question, it better be the cynical answer. Why do you want that job? I like the work. No, you want it because you can get promoted. Trump manifests that. The gun lobby manifests that. There's this thing in the country where, screw you, I got mine. How did this all evolve?
Well, I think it evolved several ways, Bob, and I would put it this way. It's more you're either with me or against me. And because politics have now become a blood sport, because civility and compromise have disappeared, and the reason they have disappeared is simply because of the growing distrust of government that has happened since Vietnam, that you get into these zero-sum situations, and they apply every place. And your analogy to sports is good, except this is sports without any rules, without any referees
really
or any
is.
umpires. And everything is fair play. And so you have the notion of robber barons of the turn of the 19th century that exist on Wall Street, and they're evil. And you have the worst of all impressions about institutions. And quite frankly, if you look back over American history, today, and on the one hand, is far more mild. We talked about this, but you talk about immigration. If you go back to 1919, 1920, and the so-called Palmer raids by the Attorney General, America was entirely anti-immigrants.
Yes.
We were deporting as many people as we could. This certainly happened with the Chinese, and we blocked the Chinese. So this anti-immigration bent is not new. It's in our roots. And so you have a lot of these things that are part of our national DNA that now have gotten to the point where they are boiling over. And the sub and substance is nobody trusts government. The reason that Trump is popular with his base is because he wants to clean out the swamp, because the swamp never worked. And so he is both a symptom and a cause. And the issue here is that in some ways, Trump's instincts are good.
Yes.
But his tragic inability to execute even his good ideas leads to this sense of incompetence. For example, as you know, President Erdogan of Turkey is visiting today. Now, I think that's a smart idea. But why does he have to take him to the White House? Why don't they meet someplace like Camp David? Because Trump is now getting all sorts of heat for giving Erdogan a White House visit, which will play very, very, very well in Turkey. And whereas I doubt Trump is going to be able to exact anything from Erdogan, I think this is going to be kind of a Kim Jong-un, President Xi, President Putin sort of pep rally, where Erdogan walks away with everything he wants. The notion is quite good. Similarly, Donald Trump was invited by Vladimir Putin for the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II for the May Day celebrations in Russia, in Moscow. I think it's a good idea for him to go. But having said that, I don't think that there's a hope in hell that he's going to accomplish anything except to embellish the prestige of Vladimir Putin. So if he had the ability to execute and follow up, I would say that was terrific. But he doesn't, and that just exacerbates the problem because now both Republicans and Democrats are going to jump on Trump for seeing Erdogan. This is a bipartisan area where both sides can come together to criticize the president, because if you took a secret vote in the Senate right now, they would vote for him to get out of town, I think overwhelmingly. But the Senate is afraid to vote publicly because they know what's going to happen. They'll get primaried by tweet, and Trump will turn against them, and this could enable those Democrats to run the deck. And as bad as Trump may be, most senators that are on the Republican side believe he's better or less bad than the alternative.
I just hit the wrong button here. Wow, I said it's certainly not very encouraging. But let's take a look. And again, our guest Harlan Ullman, the national security expert. Let's take a look at the planet itself. I'm still trying to figure out what Trump gained by allowing Erdogan to do what he did. What did the United States get out of it besides a
Nothing.
bad reputation? Then why do it?
No, I mean, it's killed us. Look, the whole issue, I just got back from a trip to Europe, and one of the things that's playing videos that's had, I think, 10 million hits is a video of Barack Obama talking about the attack on bin Laden and bin Laden's death, and contrasted with Donald Trump on Baghdadi's death. And Saturday Night Live could not have had a better satire.
It's got to be funny.
And this is exactly what Trump was saying. He died like a dog. I mean, and Obama is there in an intellectual and in a presidential way, and the comparison of both is just absolutely stunning. And the problem is, this is not fake news. This is reality. And so what Trump has done has been, I don't want to say catastrophic, but America is leaderless. This is one of the reasons why Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, gave that interview to The Economist in which he said NATO was suffering brain death. And he's right. The problem that is he sees it, Angela Merkel is leaving Germany, and so she doesn't have a strong replacement. Brexit means Britain is finished as a continental power no matter what happens. And America has Donald Trump, America first, who is withdrawing from international politics. So Macron is issuing a plea for people in Europe to take action because Europe otherwise is going to get left behind. And from his perspective, he's absolutely right. He also made the case, just because America views China and Russia as the enemy, it doesn't make sense that Europe should do the same. And in that regard, he's correct. But I'm afraid that he is lecturing to deaf ears because there's no sentiment for leadership in Europe with Merkel gone and the British really tied up with Brexit. And where you look, the situation in Hong Kong is desperate. Israel does not have a government, and it's not clear that Gantz will be able to form one. In Iraq, the riots are getting worse and worse and worse, and there's no good solution. So almost no matter where you look, and North and South Korea, by the way, and Japan are at each other's throats, our two closest Asian allies. And I can't put all this at the foot of Donald Trump, but certainly America's withdrawal internationally has helped precipitate a lot of the crisis that's taking place. Because, as you know, when geese fly in a V formation, it's always an odd number. They need a leader. And without a leader, they get lost. International politics is not much different. It needs a leader. And Vladimir Putin says, thank you very much, I am taking that role. And so you see what he's doing in the Middle East and Persian Gulf and in Central Asia is really quite competent, where Russia, with basically no real leverage, no economic leverage and minimal military leverage, is running the deck in terms of what it's done. It's put together a Caspian compromise with the other countries that border on the Caspian Sea, including Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Iran, where it has exacted a great deal and is turning Azerbaijan very much from the west towards Moscow. And he's done this through very shrewd diplomacy. And what are we doing? Withdrawing from Syria. And by the way, the withdrawal from Syria almost compromised the raid on Baghdadi, because that really pulled the cards from the deck, so to speak, because the planning was going on with the fact that we expected that we'd have more troops. And so fortunately, they were able to adjust. But this is going to have all sorts of really negative consequences. And the worst of the consequences is right here at home with these impeachment hearings, which are going to be a circus on steroids.
It is going to be a circus on steroids. Harlan Ullman, I wanted to focus on one of the things you said. And I'd like to use England, or if you will, the UK, as an anchor for it. And that is
this. It may
be
England, by the way.
Yeah, I know, because they're going to go. You know, the Scots and the Welsh are going to say we're out of here and go back to Brexit.
Well, the Northern Ireland,
Northern Ireland,
Welsh
yes.
won't, but it will be Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Yes, Northern Ireland. Thank you. But let's that will be the anchor. But here's my point: all of the linking of what Russia has done. Has it not? The linking of it to Donald Trump and his election has had an unfortunate outcome by refuting Russians' involvement, getting lost in all of that. I mean, we know the president's wrong. We know that his supporters are wrong, that they didn't involve themselves. Okay, they want to put that narrative out, fine. But what's getting mixed here, it seems to me, is the role that Russia has played in the United States, in the United Kingdom and other places, through social media, through hacking, through their espionage network, to undermine these governments, and it's getting missed because of the explosions in America. Is that not true?
It's even worse than you think. And let me say this quickly, there is nothing new here. Russia is using the Soviet playbook and using it brilliantly. As Moscow tried to interfere in the West from 1917 onwards, first for survival, It's doing it right now, and I think I'm hoping to conduct a study with the State Department that takes a look at Russian active measures, because I believe, and I don't have evidence sufficient yet, so it's a belief, that Russian engagement helped turn the Brexit vote towards leave.
See, I believe
there's
that.
no doubt that the Russians were engaged in suppressing the black vote because they didn't want Hillary engaged. And they picked things up in 2015. There was a special forces exercise in Texas called Jade something. And the Russians immediately turned that through their bots and trolls into the suspicion that the government military was going to take over Texas. And this became a real issue. It became a crisis because they were able to manipulate public opinion. And so the Russians have been brilliant at this, and they will continue. And for us to ignore it and not deal with it at the presidential level is dereliction of duty, in my judgment. And you will recall that last year the Russians tried to assassinate an ex-KGB spy, Sergei Skripal. And we say, oh dear, shame on you. But it turns out that it was Soviet and Russian law that enables the government to go after traitors, whether they live in Russia or they're abroad. And this goes back to 1940, when Trotsky, living in Mexico, who was declared a traitor by Stalin, was murdered with an ice pick in the back of his head. There's nothing new here. And the Russians will say, look, we're going after traitors. You're using drones to kill lots of people, including American citizens who may have adopted the fundamental Islamic line. But you talk about due process. Don't criticize us for doing the same thing that you do. And sadly, they have a debating point here.
You know, there's another dynamic going on, and I think a lot of Americans confuse this. There's the law within one's borders, and then there's the law without that, outside of that. And the rules, of course, are different. But and I wanted to go to that, but I want to go back to the UK for a minute. Say what you will about the UK. They've always had a very open, very frank way of business, even right down to the way they question the Prime Minister. I guess it's every Thursday. How did a company with such an open system fall victim to this? And why, when that former KGB agent was murdered by polonium, why did they not take a tougher stance with Russia? And how did they become a victim of Russia?
Well, there are two separate issues here.
Yes.
The problem in the UK with their political parties is akin to the problem that we have. Labour is so left-wing cuckoo that if Corbyn were to win, he would nationalize industry and he would set Britain back to where it was in 1946. And so they're just not credible. The Conservative Party is divided irreversibly right now three ways. The hardliner Brexiters, the middle group that want a sensible Brexit, and the Remainers who don't see this at all. And how you put together these disparate elements is really, really difficult. As far as not pursuing the Russian assassination, the Russian attempts, actually the British have done that in ways that are below the radar, and they've done it very, very discreetly through their special intelligence services and other ways. And they've hurt Russia, believe me, but they're not going public on it. And I think the Russians realize that if they take further actions like that, they're going to regret it.
I wanted to go back to something else that you said. Why problems between South Korea and Japan? It seems to me, I mean, I realize they compete economically, but why should they be at one another's throats?
History.
Yes, we know that. We know what the Japanese did to them, but still, in the modern world, what...
No, history, Bob. The whole issue was about whether there would be apologies and so forth, and both the Koreans and the Japanese sometimes are very, very hard-headed people. And as far as they are concerned, these are life-and-death issues over which losing face is part of their cultural DNA. And so they are both at each other's throats for reasons that go back to the early 1900s and the Japanese domination of Korea, and then have persisted to the current day. So our two closest allies are engaged in a trade war. They're engaged in harsh exchanges of language, and the only people who benefit from that are the Chinese and, of course, the North Koreans. And how that's reconciled is very difficult, because if the United States tries to become the bridge, that will be a bridge too far and will probably end up exacerbating the situation. But all we can possibly do is to provide good offices. But these are huge cultural hatreds and issues that go back, in this case, a century or more. And they unfortunately have come to a head at a very, very unfortunate time, given what's happening around the world and what's happening in the United States.
Okay, we need to take a quick break, and we'll be back in 1 minute with Harlan Ullman. Two items on the agenda. One that I skipped over because I was so enraptured by what you were saying is these people that work in the State Department that were listening in on calls and have to deal with the Ukraine. What is the quality of such people, number one? And number two, you hinted at it, and we'll talk about it when we come back. Where is China in all this? Sitting back and laughing, or what are they doing? We'll be right back with Harlan Ullman right after this. It is 9:30. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are in the midst of our long-form interview. Our guest, Harlan Ullman, internationally respected national security expert, as you can hear. We're going to take a quick look at the weather right now on Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone once again. You, of course, can listen in on RadioWestchester.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Periscope. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. This hour is also supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and plug-in virtual reality. It's actually warmed up a little bit. It's 25 degrees. It'll get up to 34 today. We have lots of sunshine that will keep things fairly okay. Not quite as bad as the forecasters were saying. We were going to be single digits. At any rate, tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature will hang around 24. The wind will be out of the north-northwest, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, 43. The wind out of the south, now 5 to 10. And on Friday, mostly sunny. The high will get up to 49. And this frozen state will leave us. And thank you for listening. And we return now to our conversation with Harlan Ullman. Mr. Ullman, I'd asked you before about this, and I forgot to follow up. What about the quality of these people that are going before the impeachment committee today and that testified in closed doors prior to that? These are reputable people, but the State Department seems to be angry.
Sorry, you say the word State Department. I'm not sure what that is. There is no State Department.
Why?
It's been wrecked.
Why?
And when you speak to former Secretaries of State, Colin Powell, Condi Rice, John Kerry, they are distraught. There are Foreign Service officers who are resigning by the droves. And the people that have talked, for example, the ambassador from Ukraine who was fired, that's outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous, the reasons that happened. But this is what exists under the Trump administration, where rumor from Rudy Giuliani, who was not a public official, leads to a really first-rate ambassador being subjected to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Her competence has been doubted, and she has been badly handled. Ambassador Bill Taylor was a West Point graduate, was with the 2nd Regiment, 101st in Vietnam, extended for 6 months. He spent 18 months in combat. He's been an ambassador to several places, including Ukraine. He is a man of great integrity, great honor. He's a very, very laid-back, self-depreciative, self-deprecating individual, and he is to be trusted. And Lieutenant Colonel Vindman spoke the truth. Now, what's interesting is that when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was asked about Vindman, he declined to say anything.
Well, we lost our guest, but we're going to call him back. We can do these kinds of things. We have a system, you know. Oh, my goodness, just when it was getting really hot and heavy about this issue. But we're going to go back to our phone number, and we will call him. Chris, did I tell you this was an interesting guy or what?
It's absolutely fascinating. As we tried to get him back, technology, folks, it is 2019, but still, sometimes calls drop, sometimes lines don't work, and
Yeah, well, I got him. It's ringing again.
Okay.
Yeah, but Mike Pompeo, we're going to put you back on. You folks didn't hear that, but what what Harlan said on the phone is he thought that Mike Pompeo was listening in, and we are back. You were on a roll talking about these individuals in the State
They're
Department.
great Americans. I mean, I don't like the word saying patriotism. I think that word is overused and
Yes,
it
it is.
diminishes its meaning. But these are solid Americans who are going to tell the truth. And what's going to happen is that the cross-questioning of Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan will try to put them in a star chamber. And I will say in advance, these members of Congress ought to be ashamed of themselves. It's rather like the Benghazi hearings when they tried to pillory Hillary, and you know that I'm not a great Hillary fan, but the conduct of those hearings was outrageous. And I hope it blows up in their face.
Well,
These people are going to tell the truth. That is the members of government. They all have very, very sound reputations. And may I remind your listeners, they swore an oath to the Constitution, not to the president, not to Donald Trump. And I think they will honor that oath. And it's something, unfortunately, that has been missed because loyalty above, as you pointed out earlier, loyalty to the system does not necessarily make you loyal to the individual.
No.
And I think that these people are not whistleblowers. They are telling the truth. They are talking about misdeeds, possibly even high crimes and misdemeanors that took place in the White House. And if those are not proven, certainly incompetence of record proportion for any president, certainly in the last 50 years. And they have to be admired, and I think they run the risk of being sullied by Republicans. And quite frankly, if the shoes were reversed, Democrats would be doing the same
they
thing.
would.
So I'm not condemning the Republicans. I'm just condemning the process.
And it is a shame that will happen. And now, before we move over to Japan, I have to ask you what for me is a signature question for this whole interview. I felt this way about, and I realize we're talking to some extent a bit of a revolution here, but I felt this way about Mueller, that he had his moment to depart from strict protocol and carefulness to make history. We now have the people that you mentioned, these extraordinary people, Condi Rice, the other former State Department heads. When are these people finally going to say enough is enough and speak up, even if it sounds revolutionary? How far are we going to go with who may well be a rogue president? How far?
Well, they have already spoken up. You have 133 former members of the State Department and other senior people who have taken strong stands. Condi has taken a strong stand. John Kerry has, so has Colin Powell. Except nobody listens. You know, I hate to say this, but if you're not in office today, you're a has-been. And so you can round up as many people as you want. They're not going to make much of an impact on the system, which is very, very, very sad. There is no spokesperson, and there is no leadership. And as I said earlier, because you have 30 or 40% of the population that will support Trump to the death, literally, not or figuratively, not literally, and 30 or 40% who will hate Trump no matter what, you have a political system which is irreversibly, I repeat, irreversibly divided. And I don't see anybody who's going to be able to change that, unfortunately. That's why I think that these hearings, no matter how they turn out, are political nuclear bombs that could go off.
You know, one of the themes that has run through our conversations over the years, and you've written about this extensively, is failed government. And it appears that ours is failing in front of our faces. How hopeful are you that we can save at least the government as we know it?
I don't think we can. And I think the reality, and I've written about this for a long time, is that the likelihood is that the American dream is diminished. Life is not going to be better for the vast majority of Americans than it was for their parents, and our living standards are going to decline. Now, the question is how much, because we live so very, very well, that belt tightening is something that can be done. But Americans are spoiled. And so because of that, at some stage, this could reach a critical mass. It could happen tomorrow, unlikely. It could happen in 20 years. I don't have any idea. But government at the federal level is broken. We can't agree on an infrastructure plan. We can't agree on a health care plan. We can't fix Social Security. We're spending ourselves into oblivion. $23 trillion of debt. The budget is almost $1 trillion in deficit this year alone, and we don't even have a budget. I mean, this is incompetence. And then you take a look, we're going abroad. President Trump has blasted our allies. He's talked about NATO being obsolete, and I don't think he's really changed his mind. His pals are Putin, and I think it's fine to have a personal relationship with Putin or Xi or Kim if you can get something out of it. And I don't think that we've got anything out of it. And quite frankly, this trade war, tariff war with China, even the Wall Street Journal says how it has hurt our economy. The GDP growth for the last quarter is less than 2%. It's hurting us. Yet, Trump is president. The Democrats don't have the leverage because they only control the House of Representatives. The Republican Party is gone, and there's nobody in the Republican Party with any backbone, save Mitt Romney, who's trying to grow one. And so under those circumstances, I don't see how it's easy to come up with a positive appraisal.
Do you think that the American people realize that they are themselves, I shouldn't exclude myself, we are ourselves to blame by not being more informed? The whole notion that we've spoken about here and that you eloquently put about loyalty to the Constitution rather than to the president, I think if you said that to the average American, they wouldn't understand what you meant.
Well, I think that most Americans are really consumed with living their lives. No matter how good the economy Trump says it is with 3.5% unemployment, the fact is that some large number, possibly close to 50% of Americans, could not afford an emergency of $400 or $500 if it came up. Mm-hmm. We've got people working 2 jobs. I don't think the economy is nearly as good for many, many Americans as the president does. And I think if you live in the top 1% of the world, obviously things are going quite well because of the tax cuts. But I think that we've got some huge problems. I don't know how long the stock market is going to be able to sustain itself as the Dow heads towards 28,000 and the NASDAQ towards 8,500. But the fact of the matter is I think life is far tougher for most Americans. You take a look at health care. You take a look at planning for the future. You take a look at education. It's really tough for people to make ends meet.
And,
and that's an issue. So people are concerned about that. And a lot of people are just turned off by cable news and turned off about what's happening in Washington. So I think that they, if not are oblivious, they've got more important issues right now. But I think that there's a sense that something is quite rotten in the state of Denmark. Now, having said that, I would also say that education has been moving in the wrong direction because we don't teach civics. I think if you gave the average high school or college graduate a test on the Constitution, they would score pretty low. For example, what are the qualifications for being President of the United States? Few people know that there are 4. You've got to be 35, native born, whatever that means, been a resident for 14 years, and most importantly, win a majority of electoral votes. But most people are not taught that. So when you talk about the Constitution, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, and the Bill of Rights, people don't understand, except those who really love guns, and they say, well, the Second Amendment. And if you ask them to describe or state what the Second Amendment says, well, I can carry a gun anywhere I want, which is not what the amendment says, but that's how it's been perceived.
And but yet they will refute the separation of church and state. It's interesting that. Yeah. Harlan, to hear all this, and it's obviously very accurate, is quite troubling. Harlan Oman, our guest, we're going to move in now to, and I sort of did this out of order, but that conversation needed to be had. Thank you. China, of all the things we've discussed this morning, they must be sitting back. Now, they're not quite fat, dumb, and happy because they have this issue with the trade war with the United States. But they're headed like the guy sitting back in a room watching everybody else beat each other up. If they get this trade war right, they're going to be the dominant country on earth in another 20 years, if not already.
Don't bet your last dollar on that. My concern about China is more of an implosion than it is that China becomes the dominant power. The issue here is very clear, and again, we're pretty ignorant. The threat to Chinese leadership, whether it was the Dowager Empress or an emperor or Mao or the General Secretary President Xi, has always been a peasant uprising.
Yeah, you've said that many times.
Right now, you have 400, maybe 500 million Chinese out of 1.5 billion who live at or under the poverty line. Wherever you go in China, even the most rural parts of China, you see two things. Everybody has a cell phone, and everybody has a satellite dish. Now, the government has been trying to control everything, saying you can make as much money as you want, you can live as comfortably as you want, but don't take us on. There is an inherent tension here. Plus the fact, because you have this huge underclass, that you have to make sure it has some positive vision for the future, you need dramatic economic growth of in excess of 10%. China's economic growth this year is about 6%. Now they're putting trillions of dollars in the so-called Belt and Road Initiative, in which they are, in essence, buying access to foreign markets and foreign goods. And I think the idea is by generating across the world, Africa, Latin America, elsewhere, sufficient demand for Chinese goods, this will lead to a permanent rise in the GDP of the country that will be able to sustain it. They're making a huge bet. But what's happening in many cases is that the countries, for example, Sri Lanka, can't afford the debt. And so now the Chinese are taking over ports and other facilities, which are fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have the access to resources and markets that they want. They may be controlling a great deal more real estate, but that real estate may not be generating any capital for them. So this is a big bet that we do not appreciate. And so instead, we're calling China a major adversary. And if you take a look at our national defense strategy, believe it or not, the major objective is to deter, and if war comes, defeat a range of adversaries, beginning with China and Russia. Now, how we defeat China in a war strikes me as nuts. As former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said, any Secretary of Defense who engages in a land war in Asia needs his or her head examined. We don't have enough bullets. And if you're talking about a war with Russia, that war almost certainly would be thermonuclear. And during the Cold War, when both sides had many tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, we managed to end it peacefully. So the fact is that we are calling China and Russia, in a military sense, adversaries and enemies for which we are planning, to me, is a very, very, very bad indication, because we're creating enemies we don't need against missions we cannot fulfill.
That is why, too, at the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency, his apparent reapproachment with Russia seemed to be a good idea, but then it became more personal and less strategic.
But he couldn't carry it off. We should be talking to Russia. All right, Russia went into Ukraine in 2014, so they're persona non grata. The military is not allowed to talk to Russia on specific issues. That is nuts. But abandoning the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement, abandoning, I think it'll be New START, is crazy, because the last thing we want, even if the Russians are cheating, is to engage in a new arms race, which is unnecessary and unaffordable. And quite frankly, in fairness, the National Defense Strategy is a follow-on for the Obama strategy, which really began this ridiculous notion of saying we have to deter and if war comes, defeat. That's wrong. We need to defend, we need to contain, we need to prevent, and we need to engage. But the notion of getting into a war with China or Russia is absolute
It's insane.
madness because nobody can win. It's excessive, and our European allies say this is ridiculous.
What about the I understand that within a year the mutual flyover treaty is going to be abrogated. And
Open skies.
now that treaty, is it really as beneficial? Some people say, oh, no, don't worry, satellites can take care of it. But doesn't it
They
take
can't.
but doesn't it take time to reposition a satellite?
You have to reprogram, but having access at least builds for confidence. And so if you reverse these treaties and you abrogate them with nothing to put in their place, this immediately creates a far more hostile environment. And when the Russians have got the tools to take advantage of this, all they've got to do is rattle sabers in Europe, and the Europeans are scared witless because they don't believe the Americans are going to come to their defense. Or Putin uses active measures in social media to churn up all sorts of things which will continue to divide the alliance. And the White House steps back and is fat, dumb, and happy to allow this to persist. And it doesn't require huge amounts of money. It just requires common sense and the understanding that when you're dealing in a world that is potentially hostile and certainly adversarial, you got to be smart. And quite frankly, we are just not very smart these days.
No, not these days at all. 9:49, our final 10 minutes, about 9 minutes with Harlan Ullman. Back to China just for a moment. They've taken more people out of poverty in the last, let's say, 15 years than any country ever has on Earth. I guess what I'm hearing you say about them is they're running out of steam, though. They to keep
Precisely.
And that's going to be the problem there.
That's why they have Belt and Road to try and regenerate.
Now, what about the tariff war that we're engaged in? How much will that hurt or help them, and where are we headed with that, do you think?
It'll hurt them. It'll hurt all of us. This was I make the point, if you have a headache, you don't solve that by cutting off your head. We have many grievances with China, but the way you solve them is with friends and allies who have the same grievances. So why would you pull out of the Trans-Pacific
Well, that was the Trans-Pacific. Well, I still don't know why we pulled out of that, other than that it was Obama.
And Hillary said she was going to do it too because she wanted to have labor unions. That makes no sense. And so you say to the Chinese, look, this is what needs to be done. Stop stealing our intellectual property. And as a lever, we authorize whomever it may well be, the NSA, so forth, to steal their intellectual property. Two can play at that game. And quite frankly, in many ways, they're far ahead of us. There's no more currency really in China. Everything is done on a phone. That's their credit card. Indeed, a couple of rural Chinese were in Shanghai about 6 months ago. They were out of money, so they tried to rob a grocery store, and there was no money because everything is conducted on cell phones. So in many ways, the Chinese are really quite clever and way ahead of us. There's a Chinese called Kiev Lee, who is an entrepreneur in artificial intelligence, and every 6 to 8 weeks, he runs a school to create AI engineers. Now, these are not experts in artificial intelligence in the sense, but he's turning out 50, 100, 200 every quarter, and they're being hired at $200,000 or $300,000 a year. Guess who their teachers are? Americans. Now, what are we doing about that here? How many AI engineers are we turning out? And so, in many ways, the Chinese have been exceedingly clever, and we should learn from what they're doing and steal the good ideas.
Heaven forbid.
But we don't seem to be able to do that.
Harlan, as we look, we're bringing up the rear here, I go back to that great song about, where's Joe DiMaggio when you need a hero. So this is going to be almost adolescent. But you travel in these circles, you know these men and women, these leaders in America and the military and the State Department and the political class and overseas. Are there people on the horizon? And I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek when I say hero. Are there men or women who are truly qualified and have the insight and gravitas and, of course, electability to one day deal with this for this country?
I think the answer is absolutely yes. But the problem is, who wants to serve in government? You see what's happening with the Republicans in the House. They're all quitting because they know they're going to be in the minority. And because Congress is a majority institution, when the Republicans rail about there not being a bipartisan vote, guess what, folks? That's not what the Constitution says. It's a majority. Then you have all the rules and regulations and restrictions and oversight. And you take a look, for example, at Ambassador Bill Taylor, who's a dedicated, very dedicated public servant. Do you want to put yourself through what he's going through for telling the truth? Or the former ambassador to Ukraine. You put yourself in harm's way. Ambassador Kurt Volker, who's been a subject of this, is a very close friend of mine. He has enormous integrity. I think he's a brilliant foreign service officer and a credit. But Kurt is certainly going to be somewhat damaged by all this, even though I'm absolutely certain he did the right thing. And so who wants to come into government to face this political debasement of yourself or your family, and for relatively little money? If I'm making $1 million a year as a CEO of whatever, why do I want to make maybe $200,000 in a situation where wherever I step, it could be political quicksand? So we're discouraging very, very good people from coming into government. The exception right now is the military, but at some stage, when defense spending is cut, it's going to be increasingly difficult to recruit people. And you take a look at people wanting to matriculate into the Foreign Service. I don't know about the CIA, but they are really not being swamped with applications because people see what's happening with the Foreign Service. And so young people elect to do other things. And so you've got to make government more attractive, and the only way you do that is to make it more civil. And given a government that's broken, and it does not appear to be in the best interest of Republicans or Democrats to fix it, why do I want to go into government?
Well, why would you? Well, I've got my final question involved just one such person going to do that. But first, I remind people we're in our closing moments with Harlan Ullman, author, columnist for United Press International, for UPI, his recent column out today. The author of many books, a former military man, teaches at some of the military schools. A lot to say about him. We're in our final moments with him. Now, apropos of this previous discussion, the former mayor of New York. What say you about that?
I would vote for Mike Bloomberg in a heartbeat.
Me too.
Because I think he lacks an ideology. I think he's terribly competent. I think he's an honorable man, and I think he would make a big difference. But there are several issues here. He's 77, and people rightly question about age. And unfortunately, as we said earlier, the stop and frisk policies he had in New York could turn off black voters. Charles Blow had a horrible piece in the New York Times yesterday condemning Bloomberg. But the fact of the matter is stop and frisk made the black areas safer because that's unfortunately where the bulk of the crime was. I mean, if you had stop and frisk on anywhere between 45th Street and 85th Street on Park Avenue, it would be kind of a waste of time. So you go to the high crime areas. But I think that Bloomberg has got to get beyond that, whether he can or cannot. And I wonder about his strategy, Bob, because he's really playing the cards for Super Tuesday. One could argue several things. First, he's just being a stimulant for Joe Biden, for Joe to get his act together.
Maybe.
And the reason he's doing what he's doing is to stimulate Biden because Biden would be an obvious choice. But if Biden stumbles, it is not inconceivable that Bloomberg could run as an independent because if you take a look at the 14th Amendment about how presidents are selected by the House, in which states vote as a single block, not by 435 different members, it's conceivable an independent could win sufficient majority to be the president. Now, that's a very convoluted way, but I think there are all sorts of options that Bloomberg has, and I'm not sure which one he's following.
Well, you know, I keep thinking back because I'm a little older than the rest of the planet, I think, to Bobby Kennedy when he joined that race late and gained momentum before he was assassinated. So it's not impossible.
Well, that was entirely different. You had the whole Kennedy era. Jack was still deified then. And so he had the charisma and had the standing, and at that stage, the Kennedy wealth was not being used against him because money did not, quite frankly, count as much in politics because most everything was resolved at the conventions, not through primaries. The political system has transformed itself I'd say more than 180 degrees, but that would keep it in the same direction. But it has transformed itself dramatically. And so I think a Bobby Kennedy today would be far less successful entering the race late.
Now, Harlan Ullman, I cannot thank you enough. I'm telling you, I can sense another book coming, and I'm even thinking about a title for it. The not the end of democracy, but I think that our form of democracy is having the most serious threat that it's had since the Civil War. You got to write about it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that the signs are not good, and every political system, goes up and down. Spengler may have been right about the rise and fall of civilizations. And, checks and balances, as Thomas Jefferson famously observed, said that the Constitution ought to be rewritten every generation. We just simply can't do that. And I don't know that checks and balances can work where you don't have two mainstream political parties and there's no civility and compromise.
Well, thank you. I hope people will read your column today. Go to UPI, folks. You can read his most recent column. Thank you so very, very much, Harlan Ullman. We'll talk with you next week. And if you're traveling, travel safely,
Bob.
sir.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Harlan. Whoops, I turned off the wrong button here. Harlan Ullman, everybody, and he is, as you can see, as good as it gets. And we're coming up on 10 o'clock. Jake, don't forget now, Jake by tomorrow he's been doing his research, should have some of his picks at least ready to discuss. He percolates. Thursday night is when he does it, but still he starts having these inklings. And I hope to prove how wrong he is about the famous pitcher on the Mets. Chris, it was great to have you here. Do hang out around after the show. We need to talk. I want to thank our sponsors today, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit ugch.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. It's 25 degrees, but it's not really horrible out, folks. Getting up to 34 tonight. Partly cloudy. The temperature will be 24 degrees, and things will begin to get a little better tomorrow, up to 43. Some clouds tomorrow, mostly cloudy, actually. Friday, mostly sunny, getting up to near 50. And our guests today, want to thank Harlan Ullman, A.J. Woodson, Vince, and, of course, Chris coming in, and our good buddy Jake Schaefer. And don't forget, you won't want to miss Jake Schaefer's Picks of the Week. He's like an investment firm, except for wagering on football. We will see you all tomorrow at 6 o'clock. This is Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. The morning show now concludes. Mornings with Bob Marrone. We'll see you all tomorrow.